Betting on sports can be hard, but hiring Morgan & Morgan is easy. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury firm. They have over 100 offices nationwide and more than 1,000 lawyers. Their fee is free until they win. Find out more information at forthepeople.com/bestbets or dial #law, that is #529 from your cell phone, and that is FOR, thepeople.com/bestbets. This is a paid advertisement. The warmer from the low. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've got a great podcast for you. As I typically do on a lot of Saturdays, we're going to be going guest-free today. We're just going to be giving you guys a recap of everything that we saw in college basketball on Friday here in this first segment, and then in the final segment, going to get you guys picks and analysis on all these games. We'll have two final segments as we'll do the normal Las Vegas betting board games first, and then the extra games board. That'll be the final segment. We had a lot of folks that are typical guests of mine enjoying like the Thanksgiving weekend and everything like that, so decided to give the guests a day off, and we'll take this one all myself, and we've got plenty of games to dive in on. We've got north of 60 of them on the card. Typically, I go guest free on Saturday anyway when you got a relatively large card. This one a little bit smaller, but we will keep it all fun and free flowing. And if you do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at @GNet_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Did not get in any Twitter/X questions, but we had a fun day of college basketball on Friday. Let's take a look back at it, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
Gonzaga absolutely takes it to Davidson in the battle for Atlantis. This by a count of 90-65 for Gonzaga. 6 of 16 from three-point range, pretty rock solid there, but Graham Ike has been a little bit up and down this year. 18 points, 10 rebounds, while 24 big ones out of Ben Gregg off the bench as well. Feels like he's been there for 100 million years. And for Ryan Nembhard, 14 assists to 2 turnovers. Davidson goes just 6 of 24 from three-point range, so a little bit of a dump trucking there. You saw a lot of ranked teams be able to get the job done in quite convincing fashion. This team did not, though. Arizona in the battle for Atlantis, they fall to West Virginia 83-76 in overtime. This despite the fact that West Virginia really didn't have a lot that they got out of their bench. KJ Tanner came off the bench for 6 points, and that was about it. But Armani Hansberry, 13 points, 10 rebounds, as West Virginia wins the battle on the glass by a count of 40-39. And Caleb Love was pretty solid in this game for Arizona. He supplied 24 points, granted 9 of 20 from the floor, but you'll take that if you're Arizona. And for Arizona, they lose the turnover battle by a count of 14-10. And for Arizona, you did have Trey Townsend be able to supply the team with 19 points, but could have probably used more than a 5 spot from Toby Awaka, though he was able to give the team 8 rebounds. But West Virginia, they do find a way to persevere and get the job done. Also getting the job done, they don't quite cover, but this Kentucky team, they have scored at least 96 points in all but one of their home games this year. They take down Georgia State 105-76. Number got north of 30, so the Georgia State Panthers were able to cover that, going 11 of 21 from three-point range, as you had Cesar Edwards give the team 21 points. But for Kentucky, everyone, their starters in double figures. Kobe Bray off the bench, 2 of 7 from 3. You figured that is north of 60% three-point shooting was going to fall off, but the star scorer in this one, Jackson Robinson, who was able to supply the team with 19 points. Supplying a dump trucking is Florida. They take down Wichita State 88-51. As for Florida, they're able to light it up at 14 of 33 from three-point range. Walter Clayton, 19 points, and you were able to get a double-double, 14 points, 11 rebounds out of Ruben Chenyilu. Hopefully I said that correctly. And for Wichita State, well, they did not have a good time on the boards. They lost that battle 56-30. Not a good day for Providence either, as Indiana have been looking quite bad in the Bad Boy Mowers battle for Atlantis. Not on this day, though. 89-73 the final is. For Providence, they do go 10 of 30 from three-point range, and you did have 5 of 10 three-point shooting out of Jaden Pierre to be able to supply 22 points off the bench. Finally getting going was Jabari Abdul-Rahim. He was able to supply the team with 14 points, but for Indiana, they were able to keep things very efficient. They are able to win that rebound battle by a count of 38-36, and Mackenzie Mbakbu, Malik Renew, they combined for 46 points in this one, so a very nice, powerful win there. Ole Miss and Purdue played a nip-and-tuck game where Purdue got the job done by a count of 80-78 in a game that featured some very good three-point shooting, 10 of 22 for Purdue from the outside, 15 of 36 for Ole Miss. And for Purdue, Trey Kaufman-Renn, 25 points, 13 rebounds to help the team win the battle on the glass, 37-26. Braden Smith, a double-double, 18 points, 11 assists. Have to love what you saw out of that Purdue team, and have to love what you saw out of Butler as Mississippi State ranked team. They go down, this by a count of 87-77 for Butler, 12 of 22 from three-point range, and they won the battle on the glass, 44-33. He did have, off the bench, 12 rebounds out of Keshawn Murphy for Mississippi State, but for Butler, they overcome losing that turnover battle 14-6 with the fact that you had Pierre Brooks and Javial Telford combined for 46 points, and they combined to go 7 of 12 from three-point range. So big-time performance out there. Also a big-time performance from Duke. They do not quite cover, despite the fact that Seattle went 10 of 47 from the floor, 70-48 the final. As you had some very cold shooting in this one. Duke went 10 of 36 from three-point range. Gon Kneppel, 11 points. He goes 4 of 5 from the floor, and he went 3 of 4 from 3. That means that everyone else on the roster, they went a nice whopping 7 of 32 from three-point range. But for Seattle, they find a way to cover with Matthew Alexander Moncrief giving you 12 rebounds. So yay, verily there. In terms of other results, now we saw not going to be able to give you anything in terms of New Mexico versus USC because that's this time of year. I have to have this up by midnight Pacific, 3 o'clock a.m. Eastern. So that is a game that is lingering on. But Oklahoma, they take it to Louisville. This by kind of 69-64. And for Louisville, just could not light it up from 3. 7 of 32 from the outside. Have to feel like that's going to be getting better as time goes along, as it's a loss to turnover battle by a count of 14-10. But Louisville actually really won the rebound battle in this game, 44-23. As a matter of fact, Noah Waterman and Javon Hadley by themselves had a combined 24 rebounds, but for Oklahoma, they had Mr. Moore on their side, as 24 points was provided by Jalen Moore for Oklahoma to be able to persevere in that one. In a low-scoring slog, you saw Utah State be able to take it to North Texas. This by kind of 61-57 for North Texas. Just 7 of 30 from three-point range. Aiden Wright went 5 of 14 from 3, so that means that the rest of the team went 2 of 16 from the outside. But for Utah State, even though they were a bit cold in this one and had 16 turnovers, they did find a way to be able to win the battle on the glass 38-30, and they had 28 big points out of Mason Pozlov to be able to pace them and be able to get them into the winner's circle. Also being able to get the win. How about UC Irvine putting Kent State in a chokehold? 51-39 the final, as Kent State goes 14 of 62 from the floor. 4 of 27 from three-point range. They actually won the turnover battle 14-6, but lost that rebound battle 42-32 as you had Bent Lutkan, the man from Germany, be able to supply UC Irvine with 17 points. And for Arizona State, they just continue to win. They take down St. Mary's 68-64 as St. Mary's, they shot it well from 3 in this one, 8 of 17 from the outside. They win the rebound battle 41-34, but for Arizona State, they were able to do a nice job of being able to have off the bench Mr. Jusin Sanan be able to supply the team with 19 points, goes 3 of 4 from three-point range, and that was able to pace Arizona State in this one as they were able to do it by making 2-point shots. What a novel concept. And for Texas Tech, what a novel concept of being able to cover north of 20. They take down Northern Colorado 89-64 as Northern Colorado goes 6 of 23 from 3. 13 of 23 from the outside for Texas Tech as Kevin Overton goes 4 of 6 from 3 off the bench. Christian Anderson, 4 of 6 from three-point range coming off the bench. JT Toppin, 11 points, 15 rebounds. Texas Tech actually loses the turnover battle 15-11, but they win that rebound battle 43-28. So a very nice display there. And this game went to overtime, but Kennesaw State, despite the fact that they don't get to 70 in an overtime game, they get it done by a count of 67-63. For Kennesaw State, they go just 13 of 24 from the free throw line, 10 of 32 from 3, but they were able to do a relatively solid job of being able to find some easy twos, and Towson went 5 of 28 from three-point range. Dylan Williamson, 3 of 10 from the outside. Rest of the team, 2 of 18 from three-point range, and did have a double-double off the bench for Towson, and from Mekhi Lowry, he was able to supply 14 points, 12 rebounds, but for Kennesaw State, 18 points in 44 minutes out of Jameel Miller was able to get them in, as Simeon Kotal, their top scorer, had just 5 points in this one, yet somehow, someway, they find a way to be able to persevere. Northwestern perseveres as well, 66-61 over UNLV. UNLV having a little bit of a rough time in this event as Northwestern goes 8 of 18 from three-point range. Northwestern just barely loses that rebound battle 34-33, but it was Brooks Barnizer who really stepped up in this game. 23 points, 9 boards, 6 assists, so Northwestern very happy to have him back, and Dedrin Thomas, 17 points for UNLV. Rest of the team, not too much. Clemson, they don't cover the north of 30 against Florida A&M, but they get the job done, 86-58. This game was a little bit scary early on, as Florida A&M actually had a 28-23 lead with about 6 minutes and change remaining in the first half. And then Clemson became Clemson once again, with Chase Hunter being able to supply 16 points. For Clemson, they did need to have some of the starters actually play in the second half in this one, but they won the turnover battle 16-9. They win the rebound battle 41-27 with Ian Shefflin, just 5 points, but 15 rebounds to be able to help get that done. Also being able to get the job done, you saw Belmont be able to take down Gardner-Webb, this by a count of 83-74, as the Belmont offense has really been able to home in. They put up 83 points despite going 8 of 33 from three-point range. You had a 4 of 8 three-point shooting percentage off the bench. You had a 4 of 8 three-point shooting performance from Tyler Lundblade off the bench. That's a really awesome name, but for Belmont, they were able to look pretty solid there. And also looking pretty solid, Navy on the road as an underdog. They get it done against Penn, this by a count of 86-78, as they go 15 of 32 from three-point range. You were able to get 4 of 6 three-point shooting off the bench from Jack Medley. So this is a Navy team that has been a little bit up and down, but that was an up for them. And Washington starting to be able to put things together as well. They take down Santa Clara, this by a count of 76-69, as Santa Clara does go 10 of 24 from three-point range, but they lose that turnover battle by a count of 14-8. Washington State able to do a solid job on the glass with a great of support, giving you 19 points, 8 rebounds. Virginia is still Virginia, 67-41. They just completely pummel Holy Cross. And for James Madison, not their day on Friday, 66-61. They lose to George Mason because they shoot 23 of 64 from the floor and 10 of 40 from three-point range. To A.J. Smith, he had 10 rebounds, but he also had just 2 points in this one. So that was relatively rough for James Madison. And if you had this one, this was a relatively rough one for the over as well, as neither team could hit shots in BYU versus NC State, but it is BYU who pulls it out by a count of 72-61. As for BYU, they got slowed down in this game, but they did a nice job winning that rebound battle by a count of 45-32, and had Richie Saunders be able to supply the team with 13 points. So a good spirited effort out there. Vanderbilt looking relatively solid, 87-56. They take down Tennessee Tech, and then in overtime, under the radar sneaky game. Pittsburgh now 7-1, 91-90. They take down Ohio State, and Ohio State went 10 of 20 from 3. Pittsburgh 8 of 24 from the outside, but they win this game on the glass, 36-29. They won that rebound battle. Ishmael Leggett, 21 points, 10 rebounds, and you were able to get Lowe with Jalen Lowe being able to supply 28 points of his own in this one, despite going 0-5 from 3. Left his fingerprints all over this game, and they were able to get that job done, and also being able to get the job done. How about Merrimack? The old Merrymen on the road, 72-68 over Troy, as they go 14 of 25 from 3, and some of these teams that they start out ice cold from three-point range, like Merrimack had entered in the day shooting 22.7% from three-point range. You want to keep in mind that that's not going to last forever, and for this Troy bunch, they were able to get 15 points and also 6 boards out of Miles Rigsby, but not enough for the Merrymen, as the Merrymen, they lose the rebound battle by a count 32-24, and yes, I do like saying the Merrymen, but that said, Devin Savage was able to supply the team with 23 points, and you also have a DePaul team that is still undefeated, and they cover another spread, 89-70 over Valparaiso. They're now 7-0. They've doubled their win total from last year of 3, as they go 12 of 28 from three-point range. For DePaul, very balanced scoring in this one, with Isaiah Rivera being able to pace things with 19 points. And then Boston College, after they win at Cayman Islands, they lose as a favorite of 16.5 points outright on the money line at home. Dartmouth picks them off 88-83, as for Dartmouth, 17 of 31 from three-point range, at Boston College, 5 of 23 from three-point range. Elijah Strong looks strong. He gave the team 18 points, but for Dartmouth, they just could not miss from three-point range, and that allows our good friends in the mean green to be able to get the job done. And then Appalachian St all over Colgate by a count of 72-50. If you're looking at the trends that we're seeing right now in college basketball, things have very much ironed out in terms of these totals after we saw just a massive binge of overs to begin the season over the last 7 days. So it has been underwhelming. 181 unders to 160 overs, so 53.1% hit rate to the under, and favorites in this time span not doing so great. 164, 173, and 3 against the spread. Meanwhile, if you you look overall for the season, favorites hitting at just 47.9%, 552, 601, and 17 against the spread. Meanwhile, overs and unders about as even as it gets. 577 unders, 578 overs, with that USC game still pending. So that's what we're seeing in college basketball right now, and that's what we all got on Friday. Now let's take a look at these Saturday games and give you guys picks and analysis on the board coming up next as we hit some bank shots. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. No guests today. Typically how it goes on Saturdays because we've got a lot of games, and in this case, a lot of our good friends, they're Black Friday shopping. So a little bit of a shorter Saturday podcast than normal, but you're still getting well north of 2.5 hours of podcast, so still a relatively lengthy podcast, but it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this college basketball Saturday as we hit some bank shots.
Most financial establishments close at a certain time, but not here. It is time for a side and total on every game on today's betting board bank shots.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter/X feed at Unit_D1, and we're going to be going with the normal games on the Las Vegas board first. We'll take a break, and then we'll do the extra games in the final segment, as the games on the normal board, they're mostly going to be going in time order, except for you've got the games that are happening out here in lovely Las Vegas for the Players Era Tournament. Those are going to be at the bottom along with the Arizona Tip-Off Classic games. Those games are going to be down there at the bottom, so everything else relatively in time order. And then the extra games, they involve the teams from the Atlantic Sun, the Patriot League, the MEAC, the SWAC, the Big South, the Northeast Conference, the smaller conferences out there. So how about if we get things started with 601, 602 on the betting board? It is Furman. They hit the road. They're facing off against Kansas. Kansas finds themselves as 21.5 point favorites. Total on this game is anywhere between 145.5 to 146.5. I did set my line at 24. I'm going to be willing to lay with Kansas. Just not overly bullish on this Furman team this year. And for Kansas, they've had a few days to be able to cool off after they were able to get the job done against Duke, and fully recognize that they are going to have a target on their back with being number one right now, but I think that they're going to be able to live up to it. You've got Hunter Dickinson, who's going to be able to dominate this game down low, 17 points, 10 boards, a block plus per contest, able to pop it from three-point range. And Cooper Bowser on the flip side for Furman, he does stand 6'11", but I just don't think that he stands really much of a chance of being able to hold up there. Like what I'm seeing out of PJ Smith. He, for this Furman team, has been able to come on strong after he was a starter last year. 19 points, a career 39.5% three-point shooter. He's able to give you some facilitation, and Furman always has a relatively solid offense, especially with regards to their two-point shooting. They're currently shooting 41.3% from the outside. That should be drying up a little bit, but Garrett Hine, who's been in the program for quite a while, is giving you about 5.5 boards, 8.5 points per game. But for Furman, typically they've got a little bit more top flight scoring than what they do now. Only two guys averaging north of 8.5 points per contest. Love what I'm seeing out of Zeke Mayo, 3.5 assists, 12.5 points, all sorts of versatility. And KJ Adams was able to come on strong in that game against Duke as well. 8 points, 3 assists, 3 blocks. He just did a little bit of everything for this team. Even though he's not scoring a ton of points, he's just making winning plays. When you have Dwan Ayers throwing out the ball, just think that it's too tough for Furman in this one, a team that always is outside the top 10 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. And while most games go in time order, this is actually a 3 o'clock p.m. Pacific, 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time tip. So, though it's at the top of the board, you don't have to worry about some groggy legs in this one. So, I did set my total at 154. I do like the over. And with Kansas, I'm willing to lay up to 23.5 with them. 603, 604 on the betting board. Monmouth is on the road against Seton Hall, and Seton Hall does find themselves as 14.5 point favorites. Total on this game is 127.5. Can I set my line at 12.5? I'm going to be willing to take the points with Monmouth. It's been a relatively grody Monmouth team without Xander Rice in there. He was their heart and soul player for the season ago, but for Seton Hall, even though they looked relatively solid out there in the state of South Carolina last week, still have my question marks with this bunch. Chauncey Jenkins is really the lone guy that can give you consistent scoring right now with 14 points per contest. It is a team that's actually shooting 40% from three-point range, but the 14.5 turnovers per game has been unsightly, and they're actually shooting better from three-point range than they are from two-point range, which tells me that this is probably going to dry up a little bit. Now, it's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts rebounding approach. Each of their top 5 scores have all given you between 4 and 5.3 rebounds per game. But on the Monmouth side, I do think that Abdir Bashir Jr. is going to be able to keep you lively. 19.5 points, shooting 39.5% from three. It is a Monmouth team that they have some things to clean up as well. 13 turnovers per game, but after he missed the first 3 games of the season, getting Jared Valencia back has been making a world of difference for the team, as the defense has been solid for them ever since he's come back. Aside from that first game he was back against Rutgers, they've given up 72 points or fewer in all these games. Valencia last year was a 41% three-point shooter, currently shooting just 12% from the outside. That should pick up. You've been able to get some good rebounding as well, with about 6 boards per contest out of Cornelius Robinson down low, so he gives you some good size. And then I look at a guy like an Eric Demings being able to step up. He was a starter at Utah Tech a season ago, mid-30s three-point shooter, doled the ball out a little bit, just hasn't found his footing quite yet. I think that he picks it up. Jack Collins has some good versatility, so I do think that while this game might be a little bit grimier, both of these teams are going to be able to find a little bit of three-point shooting. And for this Monmouth team, they're giving up pretty much 70 on the regular, not too much more, not too much less. For Seton, they've been a pretty dominant defense. They are a top 25 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, but again, do you think that it's a little bit of a circumstance of the competition that they play, and I do think that the ball finds its way in the basket just a little bit more in this one. I set my total at a 130.5, so I'm going to be in on the over. Seton seems to be finding a little bit of something on offense, and I'm going to take the 2 touchdowns plus here with Monmouth. 6-5, 6-6, this will be a game that I write up, as Campbell is on the road against UW Green Bay. Green Bay, a 4.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 150.5, and I'll be rating up the under. I set my total at a 145.5. Got a Campbell team that is outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, but they're doing a good job of generating turnovers, right around 100th in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. It's a UW Green Bay team that they get a little bit sloppy with it, well north of 12 turnovers per game. Now UW Green Bay does have the top scorer in all of college basketball in Anthony Roy. 28 points, 5 boards, 3 assists. He's currently shooting 48% from 3. I think that 3-point shooting percentage should be going downward just a little bit. And then outside of that, you've been able to have one other guy that's really stepped up in Marcus Hall, give you about 14 points, 4 boards. Everyone else has been pretty pedestrian for UW Green Bay. They're shooting about 35% from 3. They do a nice job at the free throw line, but this is also a Campbell team that has been having in their tough times being able to put the ball in the basketball outside the top 275 in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. But I think that they're going to be able to hold in this game. Brady Gudmundsson has been able to give you 8.5 points, shooting 38.5% from 3 for Campbell overall. They're shooting just 30% from 3, but UW Green Bay is really giving up the points, and UW Green Bay is playing fast, but they're not like warp speed fast. They're like 75th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So again, they're playing with some tempo, but it's not as if they're this just complete rocket ship. The guy that's going to need to continue to step up for Campbell is Jason Sini. He's the lone double-figure scorer for this team, 13 points, 5 boards. Like what I've been seeing out of him, but I do think that Campbell going to be able to force some turnovers here. You've been able to get 2 steals, 8 points, 5 boards out of Nolan Dorsey. Has been very versatile, and it's a UW Green Bay team that, just frankly, I just don't trust in them being able to execute late, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Campbell. I set this line at 1.5, and then with guards right up in on the under. 607, 608 on the betting board. Another game that I'll write up. Delaware is going to be playing on the road against Rider. Rider is a 1-point underdog to a pick'em, and your total is 143. I'll be writing up Rider. I feel like they should be a 3.5 point favorite with Delaware. They are well outside the top 150 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. They're starting to find their sea legs a little bit, but they just don't have anything down low either. Eric Timko is right now your top rebounder with about 5.5 boards per contest. You've had Niles Lane be relatively versatile, 14 points, 4.5 boards, and this is a Delaware team that shoots it well. They're shooting 82%. The free throw line, 37.5% from 3 with John Camden, the versatile player from Virginia Tech, giving 18.5 points, 4.5 boards, currently shooting 50% from the outside. But again, do you think that that's going to be going downward just a little bit? And I'd like to see a little bit more out of Teron Allen. He comes on over after he was at Wagner a season ago. He's a double-figure scorer, down to about 6 points per contest, and 3-point shooting from currently at 57%. Don't think that that's going to be able to maintain. Meanwhile, for Rider, they're shooting below 30% from 3, but now they get to go up against a Delaware team that has been allowing on the road well north of 38% 3-point shooting. So do you think that that should be going northward? Got TJ Weeks and along with that, Jay Alvarez in the backcourt. Both of these guys have been able to combine for about 22.5 points per contest, 9.5 boards, and Alvarez is shooting 44% from the outside. Weeks is a career about 36%, 3-point shooter. Down low, this Rider team should be able to win the battle there, as you've got a pair of Ingrams in Tariq Ingram and Ify West Ingram, who both give you about 5 boards per game. I think that they're going to be able to do a good job holding up there. Now for Rider, they do need to clean up the fact that they've been turning the ball over 15 times per contest, but now they're also getting Zion Cruz back out there as well after he spent the beginning part of the year banged up. Former top 200 recruit of DePaul, who should be able to help out as well. So do like Rider in this spot as a pick'em / a money line underdog. underdog, and did set my total 145.5. I do think that once again, you're going to see this Rider team be able to rise up a little bit more with their 3-point shooting, so in on the over, and I'm going to be in on that Rider money line / them as a very, very slight underdog. 609, 610 on the betting board, it is Marquette. They play us Western Carolina. Western Carolina, 33-point underdogs on this game, between 150.5 to a 151. Marquette, in my opinion, should be a sizable favorite, but I think we've just went a little bit too far here. Set my line at a 27.5. For Marquette, it's a unit that has been able to do a great job of being able to generate turnovers, top 50 team in the country in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis, going up against a Western Carolina team that, let's call it what it is, they're a little bit of a mismatch of a bunch of different pieces after they lose their coach in Justin Gary in the offseason. Ice Emery has been solid, comes in from the state of Wisconsin, 14 points, 2 assists, he's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and Cord Stansberry, I believe that is the son of Rick Stansberry, has been able to give you double figures as well, but the 18 turnovers in this game, not going to be savory. Now, it's not savory for Marquette is that they are a bottom half of all of college basketball team in terms of their rebound rate, and you do have for Western Carolina quite a bit of rebounding, as you've got someone like a Bernard Polite who's been able to give you 8 rebounds per game. You've gotten about 4.5 boards per contest out of Marcus Kell, so I think that'll do just enough for Western Carolina to be able to cover. You've got David Joplin on the flip side for Marquette. He's doling out 6.5 boards, 17 points. He's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range, and Marquette as a whole, I think, is going to shoot better from 3 than what they are right now. 33.7% from the outside. You got Cam Jones, who he's doing a nice job taking over the point guard duties from Mr. Tyler Kolek from a season ago. 19.5 points, 4.5 boards, 5.5 assists. He's shooting 45% from 3. CV Mitchell shot 50% from 3 with 12 points per contest. It's really more of the ancillary pieces who have been struggling with their 3-point shooting because a lot of the starting 5 has been very rock solid there. And for Marquette, that is a little bit of an issue with this team. You expected some of these younger guys to be able to step up a little bit more than they have, like Trey Norman is only giving you about a 1.5 per contest, but still do think that Marquette going to be able to get the job done, force Western Carolina into a bunch of turnovers, but I do think that Western Carolina does just enough on the glass to be able to hold in this one. And for Marquette, credit where it is due, their defense very much holding up recently, giving up fewer than 60 points in 3 of their last 5 games, so somebody total 147.5 in on the under and the points with Western Carolina. 6-11, 6-12 on the betting board. This is Ohio, and they play us to Robert Morris. Old Bobby Morris is a 9.5-point underdog. The this game between 143.5 to a 144. Said Ohio's an 11.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay. Would be much more inclined to take the points with Robert Morris if you had a healthy Cam Woods, but we have not seen him out there on the floor in a few weeks, and even if he does go in this game, most likely not going to be 100%. So that means that they're relying a lot on DJ Smith to be able to give out some facilitation. Was a starter at Little Rock 2 seasons ago. Last year just did not see a lot of minutes over at Bowling Green. And when he was at Little Rock, he gave out about 10 points, 3 assists, steal per contest. Never been a great 3-point shooter, but he's able to give you a little bit there, but just doesn't compare to Jackson Pavelski and what he's been able to provide for this Ohio team. 10 points, 4.5 boards, 5 assists, was a starter over at Wofford 2 years ago. And he was good enough to be able to make the Iowa State team last season. Now, didn't play a lot over at Iowa State, but he was good enough to be on that team, and he's a career nearly 40% 3-point shooter. And up for Ohio, they've got a lot of help around him, as A.J. Clayton has been able to do a solid job being able to throw in there 16.5 points, 6.5 boards. Now, he is the only guy on the roster that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but overall, Ohio, they protect the ball. They only give away about 11 turnovers per contest. You've been able to have other guys like A.J. Brown step up, give you 11.5 points per game. Aiden Headaway has been able to give you about 11 points per contest as well, so lots of good versatility with this Ohio team. And for Robert Morris, even though they are going to have the top rebounder in this game, as the man from Spain, Alvaro Folgueras, has been able to give you about 11 points, 11 boards per contest. You just don't have a lot from the outside, and they have a tough time taking care of the ball with the 14 turnovers per game. You've been able to get 37% 3-point shooting out of Ryan Prather, but not having Cam Woods, a guy that 2 seasons ago when he was over at North Carolina A&T was a north of 15-point per game scorer being out there. I think that really puts a lot on the rest of the backcourt, and I do think that as a result, Ohio, they're going to be able to get the job done and cover this game. Set my line at 11.5. Going to be willing to lay. And with Robert Morris, I did set my total 145.5. Ohio, they've been playing a little bit more up-tempo, and for Ohio, the defense has been very shaky. 73-plus points allowed each of their last 5 games, so in on the over, and I'm willing to lay it with Ohio. 6-13, 6-14 on the betting board. UW Milwaukee is going to be on the road facing off against Southern Miss, and Southern Miss is a 2-point home underdog with your total at a 157. I actually set Southern Miss as a 2.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take them outright on the money line. Now, UW Milwaukee last year was playing super up-tempo, and for Southern Miss, it was all over the place based on whether or not you had Andre 3000 Campbell out there on the floor. This year for Southern Miss, it's just been herky-jerky, to say the least. They've been playing quite fast when Cabello has been out there, and Andre Cabello should be good to go in this one, but you never know with that guy, as he only played 14 minutes in the team's game against Montana State on Sunday, and he has sort of been playing one game and then he's been resting the next. So you never know what you're getting there, but honestly, if he's not out there on the floor, that's not too much of a downgrade because the guy that should be running this offense, in my opinion, is Neftali Alvarez. Alvarez, he was a starter a few seasons ago over at Mercer, and when he was last out there on the floor as a main starter during the 2021-22 season, as he dealt with a lot of injuries, 3.5 assists, 12.5 points per contest, runs some good, clean offense. You've also got Dennis Shea Harris, who should be able to do a nice job down low, 7.5 boards, 12.5 points per game, going against a Milwaukee team that has been one of the better rebound rate teams in the country. Big reason why Jermichael Stillwell, he's been able to haul in there for the team, 10.5 rebounds per game. Themis Folks has been able to clean up this UW Milwaukee offense as well, shooting north of 40% from 3, 14.5 points, 5.5 assists per game, but it is still a UW Milwaukee team that is committing a few too many errors for my liking, 13.5 turnovers per game. Also shoots 64.5% the free throw line in a crunch time spot. They've been without Eric Pratt for about 6 games. He's one of their top returning scorers, and Faison Fields was expecting him to do a little bit more after last year. He had 9.5 points, 6.5 boards, down to about 5.5 points, 5.5 boards per contest. So that's been a little bit concerning. And also for the Southern Miss team, you do have a guy in Christian Watson who comes in from Miami. He's been able to give you about 12.5 points per contest for a team that overall they shoot about 34.5% from 3-point range, with D'Antoni Gordon being able to give you versatility and some nice rebounding. I do think that Southern Miss finds a way to get the job done, and with Campbell right now dealing with injury, he missed that game against Appalachian Christian. That should slow down the Southern Miss team. If Campbell is in, they speed up. When he's up, they slow down. So I did somebody tell as a result at a 148.5. I'm in on the under, and I do like Southern Miss right on the money line, figuring that Campbell most likely not going to play in this game. 6:15, 6:16 on the betting board. This is a game that's off the board. Indiana State and Iona, they do battle from Bahar Mar Convention Center out there in the Bahamas right now. I've got my handicap up with Iona being a 2-point favorite at a total of 152. So want to lay up to 1.5 with Iona, 2.5 or more taking the points with Indiana State, and then 151.5 or less in on the over, 152.5 or higher the under. This is the not like they used to bet bowl, because both of these teams have taken massive fall-offs in the last few seasons. With Indiana State, they lose darn near everything from last year. For Iona, this has just been a shell of what they have been in past years. And for this Iona team, I have a little bit more confidence in them because they finally got a win against Tarleton St. It was ugly, and whenever you face off against Tarleton St, you're going to have a lot of turnovers, and that's what happened with Iona. But I think that they've got the best player out there on the floor, Desir Reeves, who's been able to give you 14 points, 5 boards per contest. Last year over at Northern Colorado, shot north of 38% from 3. That has taken a pretty sizable fall off this season, but Yafet Munde, all down low, comes in from France. He's also been able to give you about 7 boards per contest, provides good size, and for Indiana State, they've been looking to Samaje Teal to do it all for this bunch, as he's been able to supply the team with 17 points per contest, relatively good 3-point shooter, and we did see this Indiana State team get a lot off the bench from Jaden Dodery. He came in, he went 10 of 11 from the floor for the team yesterday, but I mean, it's just a big giant hodgepodge right now for this Indiana State team. They seem to be finding a little bit more in terms of their bearings out there in the backcourt. Teal had 6 assists in the game yesterday, but it's a case where you've got Aaron Gray down low, who's been able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, was a starter at Niagara a few seasons ago, and then you really don't have a whole lot else. It's an Indiana State team that is playing very lackadaisically on defense, as other than that game that they played against Chicago State, against D1 competition, they have given up 77 plus in every single game thus far this season. So it's a good old situation of something's got to give. Iona's been turning the ball over left and right. Indiana State, they're generating some turnovers, but they're giving up points left and right. I do think that in the end, Iona has a little bit more depth and a little bit more down low to be able to get the job done in a game where both of these teams have really been struggling this year. So one lay up to 1.5 with Iona, 2.5 or more, taking those points with Indiana State, and then a 151 or less in on the over, 152.5 or higher the under. 6:17, 6:18 on the betting board. UNC Wilmington and Appalachian St to battle. Both of these teams played yesterday, so this is also a game that's off the board, but do have my handicap. I'm willing to lay up to a 1.5 with UNC Wilmington, 2.5 or more, taking those points with Appalachian State, and then I said I told 143.5 or less in on the over, 144.5 or higher in on the under. For UNC Wilmington, it's been up, down, all around for them, as the offense has really been able to get going, but the defense has been a big giant liability for them. And then on the flip side, you've got an Appalachian State team that seems to be finding that defense once again. They hold Colgate to 50 points yesterday, and I recognize that this is not the same Colgate team that they have been, but for Appalachian State, after they got completely pounded by Wisconsin, they've got into their skulls that they need to play some defense, as they have now given up 63 or fewer in 3 of their last 4 games. For Appalachian State, they've got the most versatile little player out there on the floor in CJ Hundley, 14 points, 6 boards. He's able to pop it from 3-point range, but that's it for this Appalachian St team. They're also sloppy with the ball, 13 turnovers per game. That's a bit of an issue for this team. They've been dealing with Ben Ezigu, who's been in and out of the fold. He had a nice game against their non-D1 foe where he had 12 points, 9 boards, and then against Colgate, he played a whopping 1 minute and then was removed from the game, so that's not good. Jackson Threadgill, who comes over from Charlotte, he's been able to give you about 8 points per contest. And I like Miles Seton, his 14 points and right around about 4.5 assists per game, but I think that Wilmington wins this game with their backcourt as they've got the best scorer in this game. That would be Donovan Newby, who's been able to give you 16-plus points per contest, entered into yesterday, shooting about 34.5% from 3. And overall, Wilmington entered into yesterday, shooting 33% from the outside. That should be going northward for Wilmington. Held down a little bit yesterday against UC St, but this is overall a unit that is doing a nice job, just finding themselves offensively. I like what you're able to get out of Kamari McGriff. He's been able to give you a little bit north of 11 points per contest. Was a starter for the team last year, but wasn't really too much of a factor for the team at 6'9". He should be able to bang down low with those guys over there on Appalachian St. And then Harlan Obiana, the 7-footer from Niagara. He's starting to be a little bit more comfortable with this team as well. Throwing there some Bo Montgomery in the backcourt. I do think that UNC Wilmington does just enough to be able to get the job done for a Wilmington team that's looking to play a little bit more up-tempo right now. So 143.5 or less, and on the over 144.5 or higher, the under, and then I'm going to be willing to lay up to 1.5 with UNC Wilmington, 2.5 or more. Going to be taking those points with Appalachian St. 619, 620 on the betting board. Seton, Cal State Northridge is on the road. They're facing off against Montana State. Montana State is a favorite of 4.5 points, and your total on this game is 152.5. Somehow line of 3.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Seton. This Cal State Northridge team has been quite impressive in that they bring in a lot of top flight talent, and on top of that, this is a team that's much better with their 3-point shooting than they were a season ago. Like, Seton is a team that's looking to play very much up and down, and you've got Keontae Jones, who's a good do-it-all, 6'6", almost point forward, 16 points, 9 boards, 3.5 assists, currently shooting 66% from 3. That should be going nowhere, but you're able to pair him up with a former top 75 recruit that was at BYU, was at Kansas, and Marcus Adams Jr., and he should be able to just continue to supply for this team as let's start the season, 15.5 points, 5.5 boards. Love what he's able to bring to the table, and then you've been able to have Judson Martindale be able to give you some nice ancillary scoring as a 6'7", a little bit of a do-it-all sort of guy as well. For Seton, the 14 turnovers per game. A little bit less than savory. They face off against the Montana State team that has been pretty solid at being able to generate turnovers over the last few seasons, but for Montana State, they're very reliant upon the 3-point shot. They're shooting 37.5% from 3-point. They're either super hot or they're super cold. You really don't get a lot of in-between with this team. Lots of different scoring options going all the way down to Tyler Patterson, who gives you about 7 points per contest. Max Igbong-Polo is able to give you about 10 points, 5 boards per contest. Brandon Walker chips in there, 5.5 boards, 14 points per game, and darn near everyone on the roster shooting above from 3-point range, including the 45.5% 3-point shooting that you're seeing out of the Zephyr in Bryce Zephyr. But I do think that for the Seton team, they're going to do a nice job closing out from the outside. The Seton team, they also do a relatively solid job of being able to generate some turnovers. And what I do like about the Seton team is that they've got a lot of length along the perimeter to be able to, for lack of a better term, disrupt a lot of these shots. For Cal State Northridge, do think that they're going to be able to do a nice job against a Montana State team that they just don't generate a second or third chance. Seton is allowing opponents to shoot about 32.5% from 3-point range, which I think is good enough to be able to get the job done here. Gets up my total 155.5. This is a Seton team that's very much looking to run it and gun it. They have gotten to at least 75 in each of their last 5 games. Got a Montana State team that they themselves have gotten to at least 78 in 4 of their last 5. So in on the over, and I'm willing to take 4+ here with Seton. 621, 622 on the betting board. Temple, we give our own to Lane Kiffin. Go Owls. They're on the road. They're facing off against LaSalle. LaSalle is exploring a cover as a 1-point favorite. Total on this game is 151. I said Temple as a 1.5 point favorite, so I do like Temple. All right, on the money line on this very, very small money line, but with Temple, I just think that they've got a little bit more just in terms of that backcourt, even with them dealing with Lynn Greer being out. You've got Jamal Mashburn Jr. It's giving you 23.5 points per contest. For Temple, I feel like they're just starting to be able to take on the identity of Adam Fisher. We remember he was a disciple of Michael Shrewsbury in that Penn State system, and you've got a lot of versatility with these guys. Steve Settle, he's able to give you 12+ points, 7+ boards. At 6'10", he's able to pop it from 3-point range. Babatunde Dure-Dola, he's been able to come in from the country of Canada, give the team 6.5 boards down low, so I do like what he's able to bring to the table, and that's something that LaSalle is going to have a tough time with. Demetrius Lilly does a good job for them, 8 points, 8 boards per contest. Outside of him, you really don't get a lot of rebounding for LaSalle. They are one of the lesser rebound rate teams in all of college basketball, taking good care of the ball with about 11 turnovers per game. you've got Corey McKeithen, who comes on over from Ryder. He's been able to develop some really nice, clean offense while being the top scorer, 17.5 points, shooting 40.5% from 3+ assists per contest. So that's helped the team out. And Deshaun Shepard, good versatility with about 11 points per contest, but it's a LaSalle team that can be a little bit hit or miss from three-point range. For the Semple team, they've been able to get things humming with regards to their offense, getting to at least 69 very nice points in pretty much all their games this far this season. And for LaSalle, they do leave quite a bit of something to be desired defensively as well. And I do think that this is going to be a game where Temple is going to be able to find their open looks. Now, I did somebody total 143.5, though Temple has been able to score quite a bit recently. It's a system that really is a little bit more slow, a little bit more controlled. I think that both of these teams are going to close out on the perimeter, and both of these teams don't really generate a lot of turnovers, so I think that you get a lot of, shall we say, long-lasting possessions in this one, so I'm in on the under. I do like Temple outright on the money line. 623, 624 on the betting board. Also from the Bahamas, you've got Tarleton St and Hofstra doing battle. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap. Set Hofstra as a 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay up to 15 with them, 16 or more. Going to be willing to take the points with Tarleton, and then 137 or less in on the over, 138 or higher, the under. The Tarleton St team is just bad. They entered into yesterday averaging north of 22 turnovers per game, and for Hofstra, I do think that they're just going to absolutely take it to them. This is a Hofstra team that has been playing quite a bit more slowly this season. They did have to go to overtime yesterday with Rice. That was a game where, in regulation, they scored 56 points apiece, so I mean, it's been a little bit of a slog there, and Hofstra started out the game shooting 5 of 26 from three-point range. That should be going a little bit northward. TJ Gadsden has been held to single digits this year. You've got Jaquan Sanders, who's been able to give you about 13 or so points per contest. Entered into yesterday, shooting 41% from three. That went downward, but you know what? You've got some nice pieces out there in the backcourt, and this team does a little bit of a better job down low as well. As Michael Graham comes in, he's been able to give the team 6+ boards after he began his career over at Elon and Loyola Marymount. And then Gene Amarusian, just a do-it-all sort of player that came in from Iona last season. He was a good three-point shooter, but now he's put it all together. Entered into yesterday with 15 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, shooting in the low 30s from three-point range, but those numbers went downward just a little bit with yesterday as well, but I do think that Hofstra going to do a nice job against the Tarleton St team that just simply can't hold on to the ball. And right now what's ailing Tarleton St is that they don't have their main guy out there on the floor. As Freddie Hicks, he was the top scorer for the team 2 seasons ago. He was over at Arkansas State last season and just hasn't been able to get out there on the floor this season. And you've got a few guys for Tarleton State that we thought were going to be out there, but they haven't gotten anything from them whatsoever. I think that they're still waiting on someone like an Izzy Mills as of right now. Daquan Grimes was supposed to be coming on over from Baylor. They've got a lot of guys that they were expecting to be able to give you some production, and said it's going to be up to like Boo Boo Benjamin, who's been able to give you 15 points per contest, been able to get a little bit down low out of Chris Mbakba, who's been able to give you about 6 or so rebounds per game. But again, you just can't overcome this many turnovers if you're Tarleton St. And they're even shooting 36.5% from three-point range. But other than Mbakba, along with Benjamin, you don't have a single guy on the roster that's been able to give you 6.5 points per contest at the very least entering into yesterday. And that number 3 scorer, Ronnie Harrison, had 0 points yesterday. So, I mean, it's really been a rough go of it for this Tarleton team. It's a whole is greater than the sum of its parts team, but right now the sum of its parts not really that good. So total of 137 or less in on the over, 138 or higher the under. And for Hofstra, want to lay up to 15 with them, 16 or more. I'm going to be taking those points with Tarleton St. 625, 626 on the betting board. It is the Drake. Drake is playing us the Georgia Southern. Georgia Southern is a underdog of 14 to 14.5 points. Totals between 146.5 to 147. And with the Drake, I did set them as a 13-point favorite. So I'm going to be willing to take 14 plus for Drake. Really nice for them to be able to get the job done in South Carolina last week. I do fear that perhaps they're going to get a little bit overvalued now moving forward, and I absolutely love this team. I think that Ben McCollum is doing a tremendous job with this program as a coach, but I do take a look at Georgia Southern, and they've got some nice attributes as well. They came on strong towards the back half of last season as well. Would like to see a little bit more down low, as you've only got one guy that's able to give you north of 5 boards per contest. That'd be Tyson Brown, who's been able to come on very strong after he was a part-time starter over at Rhode Island last season. 8 points, 5.5 boards. That's been nice for the team, and you've been able to have a nice, good 15 points per game out of Adante Holloman. He comes over from UT Rio Grande Valley along with UTSA. Pair of places where he was a solid scorer, career 38% three-point shooter, but has really been able to find it here. Now, for Georgia Southern, they need to reel it in on the turnovers, 16.5 turnovers per contest, but you do have a lot of guys like Bradley Douglas who's able to give you double figures. I expect a little bit more out of Devontae Parker when he's able to give it back out there and fully healthy, as well as he's been missing the last few games due to injury, most likely going to be out of the full once again in this one, but We've also got Eugene Brown, the transfer from Ohio State, who's been a little bit underachieving this year as well. Bennett Sturtz on the flip side for Drake. He is a do-it-all dynamo. 18 points, 6 assists, 5 boards. He has been tremendous for a Drake team that shooting in mid-30s from 3. The trepidation I do have with them as well, once again, the turnovers. It's not as bad as it is with Georgia Southern, but 13.5 turnovers per game. Both of these teams relatively good at being able to generate steals. Cam Many-Awu has been able to give you about 6.5 rebounds per game down low, and then the just 6'6" versatility of Daniel Abreu has been very impressive as well. Shooting 40% from 3, that goes up to 48% at home, 15 points, 3.5 boards. It's a bunch of D2 guys that have been able to scrap their way to the top, but I do think that for Georgia Southern, with them having Hallman coming out in the way that he is, and both of these teams being teams that have a lot of similarities to them, that Georgia Southern just being a little bit disrespected here. I did set my line at a 13.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the points. I did set my total at 145. Got a Drake team that's playing some very rock solid defense right now. Georgia Southern, they are playing quite a bit up tempo, but they showed that they were able to play a little bit of a slower game against West Georgia a few days ago as well. So in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to take those points with Georgia Southern. 627, 628 on the betting board. St. John's is playing against Harvard, and Harvard is an underdog of 24.5 points total on this game, between 144 to 144.5 with Harvard. I set them as an underdog of 21.5 points. I'm going to be willing to take those points. For Harvard, it's been, once again, a little bit less than savory year for them, and it just feels like every single year for this Harvard team. They have a lot of guys that go down with injuries, but it does feel like for this Tommy Amaker bunch that they're starting to finally get healthy, as Lewis Lesmond, who was their top returning scorer from a season ago, missed the first 5 games of the season. He's now back out there, so he should be able to supply some good production after last year. He had about 9 points per contest. You've had Chandler Piggy be able to give you good versatility at steal and a half, 12.5 points, 7.5 boards. Now, he's only shooting about 20% from 3-point range, but that's why you've got the star freshman and Robert Hinton, who's hitting it hard with 16 points, 5 boards. He's been able to shoot about 36% from 3-point range. I do think that he's going to be able to help this team out moving forward. And for Kadari Richmond, he showed a few flashes out there in the Bahamas, but again, you would like to see a little bit more out of him, as it's been Davion Smith, who's been the main man doling out north of 5 assists per contest. And I do think that for the St. John's team moving forward, they really just need to find these two guys to be able to, shall we say, find their bearings, be able to find that good blend between those two guys, because when they do, that's when the team is really going to be able to take off. But what has also been able to take off, Zuby Ejiofor. He's really been able to step it up down low. He's now giving the team 7+ rebounds per game. He's doing a nice job, be able to block shots, and that's going to be really tough for Harvard to be able to match up with. And then for St. John's, you've had RJ Lewis really become that top flight scorer for the team. 16.5 points, shooting 36.5% from 3. For a St. John's team that's shooting 35.5% from the outside. Again, need to clean up the 13.5 turnovers per game, but they've also done a nice job being able to generate right around about 9 steals per game. And as far as harsh as I am on Kadari Richmond, he's still been able to give the team about 5 assists per contest. So we shall see what is going to be happening there. And then Aaron Scott, as a ancillary scorer, has been able to give you about 11 points per contest. Does feel like with St. John's, they've got a few things to work out, which is why I just can't quite set them as big enough favorite to be able to get the job done. But undeniably, the talent is there with this team. I did set my total 149.5. I do think that St. John's going to be very much looking to run it and gun it. You got a Harvard team that, even though they have been held down the last few games, they have certainly been giving it up with regards to their defense as well. So this is a game where I think that St. John's, after that 63 spot against Georgia, they bounce back with their offense and they get back to 80+. So in on the over, I set my total 149.5, and we'll take those points with Harvard. 629, 630 on the betting board. It is Idaho. They play UC Riverside. Riverside, a favorite on the road of 3.5 to 4 points. So this game is between 142.5 to 143, and with UC Riverside, made them a 4.5 point favorite. This opened up at 5, so now that we're down to a 3.5 to a 4, I'm going to be willing to lay with UC Riverside. Been very impressed by this team. Mike Magpayo has been able to do a tremendous job of being able to coach these guys up, and they're just a very smart and cerebral team. A team that last year was one of the top teams in all of college basketball in terms of fewest turnovers on a per possession basis. You've got a pair of guys in the backcourt in Barrington Hargris, who he's their main guy, 4.5 assists, 19.5 points per game, along with Isaiah Moses, who's taken a little bit more of a backseat this year, but still giving you 4 assists, 11 points per contest. That really headline things. Would like to see a little bit more efficiency with their overall shots. They're only shooting about 32.5% from 3-point range, but they've been able to get a lot down low in the Cal Poly transfer and Joel Armatrading. 6.5 points, 6.5 boards per contest to be able to help hold things down low, and that's a big difference from what they had a season ago, and they're going to need it in this game. As Righto, you've got Julius Mims, who's been able to give you 6.5 boards, 11.5 points per game, and then you've got Tyler Miras, who he was limited to just a few games a season ago. He's been able to come back. He's currently shooting 44% from 3-point range, 11 points per contest at 6'7". Needed him to give you a little bit more than 2.5 rebounds per game, but certainly having a lot of production on that front, but the big issue that you have for this team is that you need a little bit better facilitation. In my opinion, you've gotten about 3 assists, 8 points per contest out of Colton Mitchell, but it feels like this team is very much centered around their low post play. They don't necessarily have a lot in terms of the backcourt. They are shooting as collective about 36% from 3, with Miras being able to shoot it so well from 3-point range, but a little bit thin with regards to depth, and Isaiah Brickner, who comes on over from Marist, has only chipped in there about 7 points and 2 assists per contest. I think that he would make a little bit more of an impact, so it is a spot where with UC Riverside, do you think that backcourt is going to win out? Do like what Idaho is doing down low, but that said, going to be willing to lay this number with UC Riverside. And with this total, I set mine at a 142.5. You do have an Idaho team that is quite low-tempoed, and I do think that for UC Riverside, they themselves, with their little bit of slower style, I think that this is going to keep it to being a little bit of a slog. So I'm going to be in on the under, set my total at 142.5, so 143 or less in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Riverside. 631, 632 on the betting board. It is Eastern Washington. They're going to be playing on the road against Utah. This will be another game that I write up, as total is 154, and Utah is a 23-point favorite, and I'll be writing up the over. As you've got an Eastern Washington team that is currently in the bottom 5 in all of college basketball in terms of opponents' 3-point shooting, and you've got a Utah team that at home is shooting well north of 40% from 3-point range. I don't think that they're going to be slowing down here. You've got a Utah team that has the Madsen brothers and Mark Madsen and Gabe Madsen. These two guys in concert with one another have been tremendous. Gabe has been your main man, 21.5 points, shooting 44% from 3-point range. But Mark, even though he only gives you about 12 points per contest, he's shooting 51% from 3-point range. They're also starting to get a little bit more down low as the 7-footer and Lawson Lovering, who missed the first 6 games of the season. He's now back out there, actually first 5 games of the season, but we've also got the versatility of Mongolian Mike, 5 boards, 5 assists, 10.5 points. He's not necessarily an amazing 3-point shooter, but he gets the ball to so many guys that are like Hunter Erickson, is shooting north of 40% from 3. Mario Little, who comes over from Baylor, he was a pretty highly touted guy, just couldn't find his footing last season. He's been able to find it here. He's given the team 9 points, 5 boards, 5 plus assists. He's shooting 43% from 3-point. Just such an unselfish team in which you've got multiple guys who are giving out north of 4.5 assists per game, and for Eastern Washington, this is not a bad 3-point shooting team themselves. I do think that they're going to find a few holes in this Utah team. They, as a collective, currently shooting about 31.5% for 3-point range, but Nick McLean, one of the top guys that returns along with Mason Williams. These two guys combined shoot about 38% for 3. Williams has been able to give you 13.5 points per contest. McLean, 16.5 points per game. Now, with Williams, you're dealing with a little bit of an injury. I think that he's probably going to be out once again in this one, so that's caused things to be a little bit more wobbly in terms of the offense. You're probably going to be looking to someone like an Elijah Thomas to step up once again, who he's been seeing some part-time starts. He's been giving the team about 32% 3-point shooting, so we'll see if he's able to step up once again, and I think that that's going to be a big issue for Eastern Washington in this one. But you also do have a man that's cooking in Andrew Cook, who's been able to give you 16 points, comes in from Carroll of Montana, and he's been able to do a nice job stepping up to the D1 ranks. Not a guy that's going to light it up from 3, but gives you a few assists, gives you a few steals, and that's a big thing for Eastern Washington. They are looking to turn defense into offense. They're generating about 9.5 steals per contest, but I think that they're going to be up against this Utah team. Now for Utah, even though they have given up now 65 points for fewer and far their last 5 games, I feel like it's just been against bad competition. Utah Tech, Mississippi Valley State, Queens NC, who is playing a back-to-back, by the way, but I do think that for Eastern Washington, they do just enough to be able to hold in there because they've got just enough on the glass. And again, they force a few more turnovers than those other teams to be able to hold in there. But I do think that there's going to be a lot of made threes in this game on both sides. So writing up the over in this spot. And at a 23 or more, as I set my line at 22.5, we'll take those points with Eastern Washington. 633, 634 on the betting board. It is Toledo, and they're going to be playing against Oakland. And Oakland does find themselves at 7-point underdogs. So on this game, it is 148. And with Toledo, I did set them as a favorite of 14.5 points. So I'm going to be willing to lay it with Toledo. They had a less than savory last game against UC San Diego, but I did take a look at what this Toledo team is able to do on offense, and they're still a top 50 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis. The 3-point shooting isn't the same as it was from a season ago, but this is also an Oakland team that they're just providing you a big giant nothing burger on offense. This Oakland team has been able to get past the 64-point plateau once, and that was against a non-D1 team. So yeah, this has been a big giant fall off for them. You've got Taburo Navalura, hopefully I said that correctly, who's been able to supply the team with about 11.5 points per contest, and Oakland should shoot better than 20% from 3-point range when it's all said and done this season, but I don't think that they're going to be above 30%. You've got DQ Cole, who's able to give you about 10 points per contest, really one of the lone returners from a season ago. Jason Woodrich, who was over at Cleveland State season ago, 7.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, and for Toledo, even though they don't necessarily have ideal size. I think that they're going to be able to do an okay job down low. You could use a little bit more of Javon Simmons in the post. He's at 6'7", giving you about 4 boards, 11.5 points per game. One of the main returners from a season ago, but I like what I'm seeing right now to Sonny Wilson. He has stepped up in a big way in the backcourt. 4 assists, 5 boards, 17 points. He's only shooting about 27% from three-point range this season. Again, think that should go northward for Toledo. They're shooting 37% from three-point range as collective, 9 turnovers per game, so they've been able to keep things nice and clean there with Isaiah Adams coming in from Buffalo. He's done a nice job being able to give this team some nice steady in terms of the backcourt, 4 rebounds. He's able to pop it from three-point range as well 2 seasons ago. Was about a 36% three-point shooter, so I do think that Toledo going to be able to lay it on an Oakland team that they, quite frankly, aren't necessarily the world's greatest team defensively. Offensively, they have just been an absolute disaster, and recognize that this Toledo team has never been applauded for their defense, but I feel like that 45 spot that they put up against San Diego, big outlier. The previous 4 games, they got to 80 plus, so I'm willing to lay it with Toledo. I did set them as a 14.5 point favorite, and with this total, I set it at a 144.5. I just don't think that Oakland's going to be able to score this year. I wish I could put it any other way, so I'm going to be looking at the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with Toledo. 635, 636 on the betting board. Eastern Michigan is going to be playing against Detroit. Detroit, 6.5 to 7-point underdogs. Total on this game, you're going to be finding this at a 133 to 133.5. So my line of 5, I'm going to be willing to take the points with Detroit. I actually like what I'm seeing out of this Detroit team, and well, Eastern Michigan is a team that's a little bit further along. They bring in Jalen Terry, who, he was a solid player over at DePaul last year. Now, DePaul was not a solid team, but he was a solid player. He's been able to give you 16 points, shooting north of 40% from three-point range. You just still don't have a ton down low. Terry is your main rebounder right now for the team with 6 boards per contest, and you do have to like some of the other ancillary pieces. Dominic Nelson, after a slow start to the season, 11.5 points, 5 boards. Jalen Billingsley has been able to give you 5.5 boards, a block, 13.5 points, and the frontline talent for Eastern Michigan is very good, but outside really their main starting 5, and then a little bit out of Yusuf Jihad, who's been able to give you 4.5 points per game. There's really not a lot of depth for Detroit. They've been able to do a nice job of having some of these guys in a bigger role, like Orlando Lovejoy, who was over at Eastern Michigan last season. 13.5 points, 3.5 assists, has just been a nice stat sheet suffer for this Detroit team. Each of their top 5 scorers are currently shooting at least 36.5% from three-point range. You've had McMahon Seal be able to step in, give you about 13.5 points per game, and for Detroit, they don't really have anyone that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but holds greater than some of its parts with someone like a Jared Larry, who comes over from the non-D1 ranks. I believe that he was at something like St. Thomas of Aquinas, and he's been able to give you mid-30s three-point shooting, 9.5 points, 4.5 boards. Like what I'm seeing in terms of just the overall whole being greater than the sum of its parts for Detroit. They are turning the ball over about 13 times per contest, but they're facing off with an Eastern Michigan team that they themselves are turning the ball over 13 times per game. So I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a sloppier game. I do think that Detroit going to be able to hold in there in a game where I do think that for Detroit, they do a nice job on the glass and you have a lot of wasted possession. So this is a game where I'm going to be willing to take those points with Detroit, and did set my total at a 139 as well. You're at the 133.5. I think we've gone a little bit too far, as I do think that both of these teams put up some nice threes. So looking at the over, and I'm going to be looking at those points with Detroit. 637, 638 on the betting board. Wright State is going to be playing against Air Force, and Wright State hopes to be the right side as they're a 10-point favorite. Total on this game, it is 137 to 137.5. This is one where I'm going to be waiting on a little bit of line movement, as I myself set my line at 10. I was seeing a little bit earlier, 1 or 2 places was opening this up closer to a 9, 9.5, and if we could get down to anything of single digits, 9.5 or less, I'm going to be willing to lay with Wright State. For Air Force, a big issue for this team is that Bo Becker, one of their top scorers from a season ago, he is still out of the fold. He went down night number 1 against North Alabama, was averaging 13 points per contest last season, and hasn't been seen since then. Now, you've had a few guys be able to pick it up, mainly Ethan Taylor has been able to do everything. He's giving you 19 points, he's throwing there 7.5 boards, 4.5 assists, shooting 42.5% from 3, and overall, it's an Air Force team that does shoot about 37.5% from the outside, but once again, much like last year, one of the worst teams in terms of rebound rate in the country. Caleb Walker has been able to give you a bit down low with about 5 boards per contest, and for Air Force, they don't turn the ball over a whole lot with about 11.5 turnovers per game, and strangely, over the last 2 years, they've actually been more efficient on both offense and defense on the road rather than at home. It makes no sense because they should have a good home court advantage, but that said, now they have to match up with Brandon Noel, who's given this Wright State team north of 20 points per contest. Alex Hubergerste, hopefully I said that correctly, 3 assists, 4 boards, 16 points per game. I'll never say that dude's name correctly, I'll be honest with you. We've been trying, but that's a very difficult one. But what is also difficult is guarding this Wright State team, a team that's shooting about 35% from 3. They turn the ball over about 11 times per contest. They're not quite that top 10 team in terms of points scored on a per possession basis like they were a season ago. And to the credit of Air Force, they've been a team that's been able to punch it inside a little bit more this season as well. They're a top 125 team in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, but I do think that for Wright State, you just have a little bit too much efficiency on the offensive side of things. You still have some of those nice pieces from a season ago, and this is going to be their first home game of the season. Keaton Norris has been able to give you about 5 assists per contest, and Michael Emirage, he's been able to give you about 5.5 points per contest, comes on over from UC Christian, where he was giving the team about 8.5 rebounds, 11.5 points per game. Good versatility at 6'7", and with Wright State being able to keep it clean and being able to win the rebound battle, do think that they should be able to get it done here. Did set my total at 144. I do think that there's going to be some nice offensive efficiency in this game, despite this being an Air Force team that's well outside the top 300 over the last few years in terms of total possessions per game, but they themselves, Air Force, gotten to at least 69 points in 3 of their last 4 games, so in on the over and at a 9.5 for less, one to lay with Wright State. 639, 640 on the betting board. This is out there in the Bahamas as you've got Rice. We give our to Lane Kiffin go Owls. They're playing against Arkansas State. No numbers up on this game, but I've got my handicap as I said Arkansas State as an 8.5 point favorite and made my total 150.5. So 150 or less and on the over, 151 or higher the under. Want to lay up to 8 with Arkansas State, 9 or more. Going to be taking those points with Rice. And the big key here for Arkansas State is that you just have so much offensive firepower with this team. And additionally, you now have a Rice team that's going to be a little bit tired as they went into overtime yesterday against Hofstra, albeit a low-scoring slog of a game, but they still went into overtime in that one. And for Rice, they just need to do a better job of being able to take care of the ball as they've been turning the ball over north of 13 times per contest. It is a backcourt that's in quite a bit of transition as Kellen Amos and Trey Borneau, they come in from lower levels. Borneau was over at USC Upstate season ago. He's been able to give the team 14 points, 5.5 boards, 4 assists. He's been a nice edgy sufferer that entered into yesterday shooting north of 50% from 3. You knew that that was going to be drying up a little bit. Kellen Amos, he comes out over from Central Connecticut, 4.5 boards, 11 points per contest, 6'7", a little bit of a do-it-all sort of player, and I'm waiting for really Andrew Akuchi to be able to find his bearings as he was a guy that saw a few starts a few seasons ago at 6'11". He's been able to give you about 4 boards per contest off the bench, but you just need to get a little bit more there. And then for this Arkansas State team, I do think that they should be able to win that battle on the boards as they bring in a guy that I really like in Rashad Marshall, who's done a nice job giving you 8 boards per contest. He was over at Ole Miss last season. Not going to give you a whole heck of a lot in terms of the scoring department, but does a good job cleaning up those boards. And then Kobe Julian, he's just a guy that's able to give you a bit of everything. 13.5 points, 5.5 boards. Last year at Louisiana, shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Chips in there a block, a steal per contest. So those are the sorts of guys that I like. Taron Todd, he's been able to give you 15-plus points per contest. Arion Ford, he's been with the program for quite a while. Last season, he was shooting 37.5% from 3-point for an Arkansas State team that overall this season, they entered into yesterday shooting just 31% from the outside. Fully expect this to be going northward with guys like Avery Feltz and company still trying to find their sea legs, and I think that they're going to do so against a Rice team that has been turning the ball over a ton. They do have Caden Boom Boom Powell down low, so they would give you about 8 rebounds per game, but still think that Arkansas State does a good job on the glass, and they've got them outgunned in the backcourt. So I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Arkansas State, 9 or more taking those points with Rice, and then 150 or less in on the over, 151 or higher the under. 641, 642 on the betting board. It is Kent State and Kennesaw State doing battle out there in the lovely country of Canada. No numbers up on this game because both of these teams played yesterday, but I've got my handicap. Kent State, I made a 2.5 point favorite, so 2 or less willing to lay with Kent State, 3 or more taking the points with Kennesaw, and then I did set my total at a 152.5, so 152 or less, and on the over 153 or higher the under. I initially set my total at 156.5, but now you've got a Kennesaw State team that they went to overtime yesterday, and throughout this entire event, they've been playing a little bit more slowly than what they're used to. Now, I do think that they're going to be cranking it up a little bit more, but we saw them play an overtime game yesterday, which neither team got to 70 points, but yet they were able to manage to get the job done. And for this Kent State team, they've been a little bit of an all-over-the-place team thus far this season, but going into that game against UC Irvine, felt like they were finding their sea legs with Cameron Davis being the main man, 16 points per contest, shooting 47% from 3 for a Kent State team that, when they made the NCAA tournament 2 seasons ago, their forte was generating turnovers, and they're not quite at that point yet, but it does feel like they're starting to be able to find a few guys that are able to generate those steals. Sion Medley, he comes on over from St. Louis, has been a nice facilitator, not going to give you a lot of scoring, but 3 assists to go along with his 5.5 points per contest. Jalen Sullinger, after he was a main scorer for the team last year, he's been a little bit more of the sixth man. Entered into yesterday shooting 39% from 3, about 10 points per contest. And Silron Hornbeek has been that guy down low that has really been the glue with about 7 rebounds per game. On the flip side, you've got a Kennesaw St team that has not necessarily a ton of size, but they've been able to find a freshman to be able to help them hold in there on the boards, as you've had Brandon Luby able to give you about 7 or so rebounds per game, and then Simeon Koldo. He's the guy that really holds things down in the backcourt. Entered into yesterday with 17 points, shooting north of 40% from 3 for a Kennesaw team that overall shooting 35% from 3-point range entering into yesterday. And what we saw yesterday is certainly going to be tanking those numbers a little bit, as they were ice cold from the floor, so do expect a little bit of a heat up after yesterday. They shot 10 of 32 from 3-point range, but you still have quite a few guys that are able to stick with it, including a freshman and 6'5" Adrian Boley, who's been able to supply the team with 15.5 points per contest, was pretty highly touted coming out of high school as well. So do you think that Kennesaw State going to be able to regain a little bit of that tempo? Kent State is not necessarily a slow team themselves, so 152 or less in on the over, 153 or higher the under. Now with Kennesaw 3 or more, willing to take points with them. Kent State, I'm willing to lay up to 2 with them. 643, 644 on the betting board. You've got Cal State Fullerton, and they're going to be on the road against Pacific. Pacific, a 2 to 2.5 point favorite. Total on this game is between 138.5 to 139. They're saying that on a neutral court, Fullerton should be the favorite, and I disagree. I set Pacific as a 4.5 point favorite. Both of these teams are in relatively rough shape right now, but I do take a look at this Fullerton team, and I just wonder what this team does well. As for our Fullerton, you've right now got one guy that's able to give you double figures in Donovan Ode, 11 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. And for Pacific, I know that it's going to be a little bit of a slow grind with Dave Smart now at the helm. He comes over after he was actually very successful coaching in the country of Canada. Spent a little bit of time as Texas Tech's assistant, and brought with him Lamar Washington, who's been that main point guard with 7 assists, 10.5 points per game. Now with Pacific, even though they dole out the ball relatively well, they're shooting just 29% from 3. They're turning the ball over 13 times per game, but you got a nice 17.5 point per game score. And Elijah Fisher throws in their 5 boards. He's been shooting north of 40% from 3. Another guy that followed Mr. Smart on over from Texas Tech. And then you've got a man that was starring out there in the country of Canada in Elias Randolph, who's been a do-it-all guy. 2.5 assists, 8.5 boards, 18 points per contest. So love what I'm seeing there. Depth is a little bit of an issue, but you've got a 7-footer in Jazz Johnson who's able to give you some size, and that's something that Fullerton just is not going to be able to keep up with in general. They do not have a point guard. Fullerton does either. They don't have a single guy that's giving you north of 1.4 assists per game. In terms of assists per turnover / per made bucket, just anything that is gauging assists, they're pretty much dead last in all of college basketball right now. They're shooting 27% from 3. To their credit, they shoot it well at the free throw line, but that's about the only thing that they have going for them. They do bring in a Missouri transfer in Caleb Brown, and his 1.4 assists per game is right now leading the way. Gives you about 6 points per contest. It's a team that's really not that great on the boards. They're not great from 3-point range. They're really not elite with regards to their defense. I'm looking for nice things to say about Fullerton, and I'm just not finding them, so I'm going to be willing to lay with Pacific, set them as a 4.5 point favorite, and they make by a total a 138.5, so here at a 139, I'm going to be looking at that under. 645, 646 on the betting board. It is Western Kentucky, and they play us some Marshall. Marshall is a 5.5 to a 6-point underdog. Total on this game, it is between a 153 to a 154, and I did set my total 158. I do like the over for Marshall, even though you do have a coaching regime change. This is still a pretty up-tempo team, and for Marshall, I do think that their rebounding is actually going to be rock solid in this game. You've got a pair of guys that last year were averaging 7+ rebounds per game, and Obiana Onchile Killian, along with Nate Martin. Martin was averaging darn near a double-double last season, and he's picked up right where he left off from a season ago, 15.5 points, 9.5 boards per contest, and Dezane Mingo has been able to give you 5 assists per game as well. But this Western Kentucky team, even though they are still playing at a rapid pace, they've been a little bit better defensively. They've been able to do a nice job on the boards as well, as Babacar Faye has been able to give you about 7.5 or so rebounds per game. You've been able to get 5.5 boards, 7.5 points per game out of Enoch Kellambe. So these guys have really been able to do a good job there, but it's Don McHenry who's really been able to transform things. Not a great 3-point shooter, but he gets it to guys that are, like you've got 46.5% 3-point shooting and 12.5 points per contest out of Julian Threadford. For McHenry, he's able to give you those 16 points per contest. Does a good job of just being able to get everyone involved, and then had a very unselfish pass first guy in Jalen Jackson, who actually came over from the old coaching regime that came over from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. He's stuck with the program. He's become the team's leader in assists, despite giving you fear that 2 points per contest. It's a Western Kentucky team that, even though they play fast, they only turn the ball over 12 times per contest. They're generating 9 steals per game. It truly is one of those just collective being better than the sum of its parts sort of teams as well. So I did set my line at an 8 with this Western Kentucky team. Think that they should be able to do a nice job down low against a Marshall unit that has been all over the place in terms of their defense. In their last 5 games, they have given up 90, 63, 62, 80, and 53 points. Meanwhile, for Western Kentucky, they themselves have been up, down, all around with regards to their offense, but do think that this is going to be a game that gets cranked up tempo that Western Kentucky is able to control. So, want to lay up to 7.5 with Western Kentucky, and going to be in on this total over semi-total 158. 647, 648 on the betting board. It is Omaha, and they're going to be playing us to Abilene Christian. Another game they'll be writing up as Abilene Christian, a very slight road favorite, finding them between 1.5 and 2-point favorites. So on this game between 142 to 143, and I wrote up Omaha as I set them as a 3.5-point favorite. I like Omaha to be able to win this game outright on the money line. For Omaha, they are going to be able to exploit an Abilene Christian team that has just been awful with their 3-point shooting defense. Now, I think that they should be seeing some positivity, but the reason why I think that they're going to see some positivity is because there's no way that they can't. Right now, at a 364 D1 teams, Abilene Christian is 364th in opponent's 3-point shooting percentage at north of 50%. Like, good grief, it's been bad. And this is a Omaha team that is shooting as a collective right around about 37.5% from 3-point range. Markel Sutton has been your main guy, 7.5 boards, 16.5 points per game. He's not necessarily the guy that goes into flamethrower mode from 3-point range, but that's more guys like a J.J. White, who shoots 36% from 3 with about 10 points per contest. Deshaun Glover, he's been able to give you 10.5 points. He's currently shooting north of 50% from 3-point range. Again, that should be ticking downward just a little bit, but it's an Omaha team that has been valuing the ball a little bit more. They've gotten the turnovers down to about 12.5 per contest, as you've been able to find a main facilitator coming in from North Dakota State in Lance Waddles, who's been able to give you 10 points, 4 boards, 3 assists, and on the flip side, for Abilene Christian, this team does a nice job of generating turnovers, but they also turn the ball over about 15.5 times per contest. Their 3-point shooting has been all over the place this season, as well as you bring in Keon Williams, who was over at Oklahoma State. He's been able to do a nice job as a just sort of stat sheet stuff for 4.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 13 points per contest. Overall, it is a unit that's shooting 33% for 3-point range, with Hunter Jack Madden last year shooting 40% for 3, more around 38% this season, 10.5 points per contest. But for Keon Williams, he's been dealing with a little bit of ailment as well. He missed a game earlier in the season. You've got the man from Italy who's been able to give you 14 points per contest in Leonardo Batali. He's been able to do a solid job of being able to help out this unit. For Abilene Christian, they should have all their pieces out there, even though they've been dealing with a few injuries, but they don't have that main facilitator. Rich Smith has been able to give you about 3 assists per contest, but they're a little bit rudderless with that regard, which is why we have seen this team be very much all over the place with regards to their scoring. Meanwhile, for Omaha, this team I do think is going to be able to do a nice job finding a bunch of open looks and being able to get the job done against an Abilene Christian team that they're willing to play up tempo. So I did set my line at a 145.5 for this total. I like it over. I like Nebraska Omaha. All right, on the money line, set that as a write-up and wrote this up as well. As you've got 649, 650 on the betting board. Portland State playing us to Utah Tech. Utah Tech is an underdog of 6 points, and your total on this game is between 152 to 153. Open up at 4.5. I wrote this up pretty much in the middle of A and B, but I set Portland State as a 10-point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay it, and I wrote that up for Utah Tech. This unit just doesn't necessarily do a whole lot right. They were able to get the job done against Denver a few days ago, but that said, there has been little triumph for Utah Tech. You got Tennessee Rainwater, who's right around 6'5", 6'6", and that is his real name, by the way. First name Tennessee, last name Rainwater, and he's been able to give you about 9 points per contest, throwing in there a few boards. So he's been a relatively good player for this team. Noe Gonsalves, he's the main, guess you could call it, scorer from a season ago. He's been able to give the team double figures, but this is a Utah Tech team that typically it very much relies upon 3-point shooting, and right now their 3-point shooting percentage is 25.7%. Now they've cleaned up the turnovers. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per game, but hasn't resulted in very good shots in general. Beion Riley has been able to give you 8 rebounds per game, but he doesn't have a lot of size, and nobody else on the roster gives you north of 4 boards per contest. So Portland State, with Isaiah Jones being able to give you 6 rebounds per game, he should be able to dominate there. And then you've got in the backcourt a nice scorer in Jalen Henderson, who's able to give you 14.5 points per game. But the guy to really watch out for is Keon Myers, who's currently in the top 15 nationally in regards to assists per game. Not necessarily too much of an assertive scorer. He's giving you about 8.5 points per game. He comes on over from the non-D1 ranks. Believe that he was over at West Oregon, and he's been able to do a rock-solid job of just being able to get the ball in the hands of someone like a Shane Noel, who is a former top 200 recruit, began his career over at UNLV. He's been able to give you about 10 points per game. His Portland State team as a whole is shooting 37% from 3 and one of the most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball. Need to clean up the 14.5 turnovers per game, though that's not really on Myers. He's given out fewer than 3 turnovers per game, despite the fact that he's got the ball in his hands so much. Ishmael Habib, he's able to give you something from the outside as well, shooting 41% from 3 with about 9.5 points per contest, and I think that there's just way too much for this Utah State team to try to defend. So do think that Portland State is going to be able to facilitate their way to a victory, and for Portland State, they have gone to at least 74 points in pretty much all but one of their games as far this season. So I am in on this Portland State side. I wrote that up, and with regards to total, set my total at 158, so I'm also in on the over. 651, 652 on the betting board. Southern Utah is going to be playing against Cal State Bakersfield. Meet for the Roadrunners, who find themselves as 4-point underdogs. Total on this game, it is 139.5 to a 140, and for Southern Utah, made them a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it. The Southern Utah team is one that I'm starting to warm up on. I didn't necessarily have high expectations for them coming into the season, but they've been wowing me a little bit, and a big reason why is because of the non-D1 transfer in Jameer Simpson. He comes in from UW Parkside, the lone D2 school out there in the great state of Wisconsin. 16 points, 4 boards. He's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. It's not a Southern Utah team that's going to knock your socks off from 3-point range. You're shooting about 35.5% from the outside. Do you think that that'll go downward as the season goes along? But you've got Dominique Ford, the top scorer from last season, who's been able to supply the team with 13 points per game. But like what I'm seeing down low from guys like a Jamari Sibley and Brock Felder, they're both giving me about 6 to 6.5 rebounds per game. This team has been playing much better defensively than they did a season ago, and they go up against a Bakersfield team that their identity is very much playing defense as well, but they've been able to find a little bit more than just one guy to give them offense, and that was a big issue why you had Bakersfield be as stagnant as they were last season. Caleb Higgins gave the team 18 points per contest. Nobody else gave you more than 8, and they still have that one alpha dog in Jabel Jones. He's able to give you about 2 assists, 16.5 points per contest, but now you've been able to get 15.5 points, 5.5 boards out of Corey Stevenson. You've got Marvin McGee, who's able to give you 12 points, 4.5 rebounds, so it's a little bit more dispersed, and you've been able to get some rebounding down low with Fidelius Okerke, who comes over from Seton, give you 2 blocks, 5.5 rebounds per game. It's a Bakersfield team that as well, they're only turning the ball over 10.5 times per contest. They don't play fast, but they play efficiently. They shoot 38% from 3-point range as a collective as well. Have a Southern Utah team that is much more willing to run, and we've been seeing that with them being able to put up pretty much 70-plus points in all their games against teams not named UCLA thus far this season, but I do think that for Southern Utah, just a little bit too much for this Bakersfield team to handle, and I do think that Southern Utah, with the way that they're able to crash the boards, going to be able to win this game down low. So, did say Southern Utah as a 6-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the 4, and maybe my total 142 as well. I think that you might be seeing some late game filling, and do think that you're going to see some good efficiency. So, looking at the over, and I'm willing to lay with Southern Utah, 653, 654 on the betting board. Southeast Missouri is going to be playing us to UMKC. Southeast Missouri State, a 2.5-point home underdog. This game between 137.5 to 138, and for UMKC, I made them a 5.5-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay this small number. As for UMKC, it's been interesting the way that they have transformed themselves over the last few seasons. As ever since Marvin Menzies has taken over, they've been much more of a defense-oriented team, and I think that is going to be much more the case moving forward against a Southeast Missouri State team that, since making the NCAA tournament, they just haven't been able to find themselves. Now, I like what they bring in Teddy Washington from Texas A&M Corpus Christi. He's just been doing it all for the team. 16.5 points, 7.5 boards, 3 assists. Not necessarily shooting it well from 3, but he's cleaned up an offense that was just anemic last year. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per game. They do need to find, for lack of a better term, bucket getters, because you just don't have a lot outside of your main 3. As on top of Washington, you've also got B.J. Ward, who gives you 15.5 points per contest, and Rob Martin, he was the main scorer from a season ago. He's been able to give you about 12.5 points per contest. And between Ward and Martin, they've been able to combine for about 6.5 assists per contest as well, but team shoots as a collective 32% from 3, 66% at the free throw line. And outside of Washington, you know, one guy that gives you north of 3 rebounds per game in TJ Beal, 6'7", a little bit of a combo player, so that's going to be really working against this team. As you got for UMKC, a nice edgy suffering Jamar Brown, 15 points, 8 boards, shooting 39.5% from 3, and this team just generates turnovers. Each have your top 5 scorers for UMKC. They're all giving you at least a steal per game. Now, albeit they played against that non-Division I opponent in Calvary, where they beat them by quite literally 100 points, but having Anderson Kopp back is big as well. He was limited to 10 games last season, and it looked like he was becoming that do-it-all player with 13 points, 5 boards, 3 assists per contest before going down with an injury, picking up right where he left off. 11 points, 4 boards, 3 assists. So, do like what he's able to bring to the table for this team. You don't necessarily have a guy that's like a true, and air quotes here big, but Melvin Ikamboli, hopefully I said that correctly, gentleman from France. He has been able to step in, was a part-time starter a season ago. He's now been able to log for the team about 6.5 or so rebounds per game, like what I'm seeing there. Do you think that with UMKC, they're going to do a good job of being able to keep things clean? And Southeast Missouri State this far, they haven't turned the ball over a ton. I do think that their day of reckoning is going to be coming, especially with them having just a little bit of roughness with regards to their three-point shooting defense as well. I did set my total at a 141.5. I do think that UMKC can be able to find some nice open looks and turn that defense into offense. So do like the over, and I'm willing to lay it with UMKC. 655, 656 on the betting board. Towson and UC Irvine do battle from the country of Canada. No numbers currently up on this game, but I've got my handicap as I did set Irvine as an 8.5 point favorite with a total of 132.5. So want to lay up to 8 with Irvine, 9 or more taking those points with Towson, then 132 or less, and on the over 133 or higher, the under. We saw Towson actually very much get their style yesterday against Kennesaw State. Just wasn't enough to be able to get the job done, and now they have to go up against a UC Irvine team that wish I could put any other way, but this team is just a tough customer. They've got a 7-footer in Bent Lutken who's able to pop it from 3-point range. He gives you some really nice production down low, 5+ boards, a double-figure amount of points, and then Devin Tillis, he's a shifty 6'6" gentleman that currently is shooting 72% from 3-point range going to yesterday. That should be going downward, but has been able to log for the team about 14.5 points per game, and the big question they had for UC Irvine was replacing the facilitation of Peter Cockrell. Justin Owen has done a nice job of being able to do so. Nearly 4 assists going into yesterday, 12 points, and still shooting in the high 30s from 3-point range. Flip side, you've got a Towson unit that they do lose their main rebounder from a season ago in Charles Thompson, but they've been able to maintain that slow grinder pace outside the top 10 in terms of total possessions per game. Nenda Tark is a nice stat sheet stuffer. He was actually one of the leaders in steals in all of college basketball about 3 or so years ago. He's currently giving the team 12 points, 5.5 boards, about a steal and a half per contest. You need a little bit more efficiency out of the 3-point shooting of this team. Their shooting is collective about 32.5% from 3, and that went downward with what we saw yesterday, but still have some nice backcourt pieces, though they are a little bit short-handed right now. Tyler Tejada along Christian May, 2 of their top scorers from a season ago, and Tejada, when he's been out there this year, he's been averaging 14.5 points per game. These 2 guys are out of the fold, so that puts the onus on Dylan Williamson to really pick it up offensively, shooting well north of 45% from 3, logging 15 points per game. He has been able to do a great job for this unit, but you can tell that without Charles Thompson, this team does not necessarily have that one go-to guy down low. They've been able to get about 6 boards per contest out of Makai Lowry, but I think that that's going to be an issue against a UC Irvine team that's just stacked full of size. So want to lay up to 8 with Irvine, 9 or more. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Towson, then 132 or less, and on the over 133 or higher, the under 657, 658 on the betting board. It is Cal Poly, and they're on the road. They're facing off against Stanford. Stanford is a 14 to 14.5 point favorite. 152.5 to 153 is your total. Set my total 153.5. Not willing to go past a 153, but I do like that over, and for Stanford, made them a 13.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take those points with Cal Poly. Cal Poly has really been able to turn over a new leaf this year. It was very clear that they needed a coaching change, and Mike DeGeorge has come in from the D2 ranks. He was over at Colorado Mesa a season ago, and he's brought a super duper up-tempo style, a very exciting style in which the team is shooting 35% from 3. Need to dial it back on the turnovers. They're turning the ball over 16 times per contest, but Isaac Jessup is a guy that just stuffs the stat sheet. A little bit over 2 assists, 2.6 steals, 13.5 points per game. They don't necessarily have that one guy down low that's able to bang with teams, which that's going to be tough against Maxime Reynard, who's saying 7'1". He's right now giving the Stanford team 23.5 points, 12.5 boards. He's in the top 5 nationally in terms of both points and rebounds per game, all while shooting 40% from 3-point range. So that's going to be rough for them, and Jalen Blakes has been very efficient for the Stanford team. An assist-to-turnover ratio north of 5. He's been able to supply the team with 15.5 points per contest. It is the Stanford team that they're shooting about 32% from 3, and they do a nice job being able to generate some steals as well. Jalen Blakes has been able to give you about 2 steals per contest. You've got Ryan Argawal, who's been able to give you a steal, 7 points, 5.5 boards. So do like the overall shiftiness and versatility there. But I do think that with Cal Poly, their up-tempo, just beat you down sort of style in the backcourt, I do think that it's going to take a little bit of a toll on Stanford. I do think that for Stanford, they're going to be able to find a lot of nice open shots, as this has been one of the more efficient offenses in all of college basketball. But even though Cal Poly is really, in my opinion, not going to have too much of an answer for Reynard, I think that they do just enough to hold in there. I do think that they turn this game, for lack of a better term, a little bit more scrambled. So this is my line at 13.5. We'll take 2 touchdowns plus here with Cal Poly, and at a 153 or less, I'm in on the over. 659, 660 on the betting board. UC Davis hits the road. They're facing off against Oregon State. Oregon State finds themselves as favorites of 10.5 to 11 points on this game, between 140 to 141. say UC Davis as a 6.5-point underdog. So I'm going to be willing to take the points. I've been very impressed by this UC Davis team. They've done a really quality job of just having Ty Johnson take over games. He's given you north of 25 points per contest, a top 10 player in all of college basketball in terms of points per game. And now they go up against an Oregon State unit that has been able to have a lot of shiftiness with Michael Rataj and what he's been able to provide at 6'9", 16 points, 9 boards, currently shooting 37% from three-point range. Going to be a little bit tough for UC Davis there, but you've got Nico Rokac, who down low has been able to give you about 8.5 rebounds per game. And under the radar, Pablo Tamba, who last season he was a reserve for the team that didn't necessarily do a ton. He's really been able to up his game. 12.5 points, 6.5 boards, has been a real nice dominator for them down low. Leo DeBrule has been able to throw in there about 11 points per game, and he shoots north of 40% from three, and that's big for a team that is collective, shooting just 30% from three. This is a UC Davis team that they turn the ball over a lot on offense. They did last year. They are this year. Both years they've been outside the top 3 in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis on offense, but on defense they've been over the last 2 years a top 50 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Now they go up against an Oregon State team that they're turning the ball over about 12.5 times per contest, and with how slow their tempo is, that's not necessarily amazing. You've got DeMarco Minor, Nate Kings, these two guys being able to combine for about 23.5 points per contest. Kings is right now shooting 57% from three-point range. We should see that go southward a little bit, and then Parcelf Allah is able to give you a block, 4.5 rebounds per game down low for Oregon State. But I do think that Ty Johnson, all that he's able to do for this UC Davis team and the way that he generates turnovers is going to be able to force this game to become a little bit more, shall we say, uncomfortable for Oregon State and allow UC Davis to be able to hold in there. So did set my line at a 140.5 in terms of this total. I'm going to be willing to take those points with UC Davis and at a 140 or less in on the over. Now we go to lovely Las Vegas for the Players Era Tournament. 661, 662. Notre Dame and Creighton are going to be doing battle, with Creighton being a favorite of 5 to 5.5 points. On this game between 145 to 145.5. I did set Creighton as a favorite of 6 points, so I'm going to be willing to lay the 5, but did a write-up for this game, and I'm in on the under. I set my total at 136. You've got the main guards for both of these teams out. Steve Ashworth is going to be out pretty much for the entirety of the season for Creighton, and then you've got Marcus Burton on the flip side for Notre Dame, who's going to be out for several weeks, and Burton was doing it all for this bunch. He was throwing in there 18-plus points, 4.5 boards, 4.5 assists. That's an issue, and Ryan Kalkbrenner just has not been impressing me recently. With Ashworth out of the fold in this players event, he's given the team 10 blocks down low, so he's been able to do that, but he's given you a combined 20 points in these last 2 games as well. You need a little bit more there. You've got a Creighton team that has not necessarily the same three-point shooting that they've had in the past. Overall, their shooting is collective 30% from 3. That should go a little bit northward. Pop Isaacs, he's shooting about 35% for 3, 16 points per contest, but now you're looking at guys like Jemiah Neal and company being able to step up, and that's not a place where you want to be, but also for Notre Dame, they've got a lot of, shall we say, bare bones. They're going to need J.R. Kozinski, who last year was a pretty rock-solid scorer, to be able to step it up. He's only been able to give the team 4 points per contest. They do a pretty solid job down low with Kiba Njai. Tay Davis combining for 12 rebounds per game. Davis has been able to slide the team with 14 points, shooting 37.5% from the outside, but because of this injury, now you've got 3 guys in Davis, Matt Aloko, and Brandon Shrewsbury that give you double figures. Njai gives you about 7 points per game, and you just haven't been able to get a lot else. I think that you're probably going to need to get a little bit more of Nikita Kostanatovsky, who comes on over from Monmouth. He's only been able to give you about 3 points, 3 boards per contest at 6'10". He's probably going to be seeing a few more minutes, and I fully anticipate this Notre Dame team trying to put on the brakes. Now, I did set Notre Dame as a 6-point underdog, so willing to lay 5 to 5.5 with Creighton, but I think that this is going to be a low-scoring slog of a game, so did write up the under as well. 663, 664 on the betting board. Rutgers and Texas A&M from lovely Las Vegas, and with Rutgers, they are a 4.5-point underdog to this game between 147.5 to 148, and with Rutgers, made them a 5.5-point underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay it with A&M. With Texas A&M, they were number 1 in all of college basketball last year in terms of their offensive rebound percentage, and I think that they're going to do a nice job of being able to just win the battle on the glass. Once again, as Rutgers has been able to get some solid production down low. Jordan Durcock, who's been able to do a bit of everything at 6'6", 8 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists, so he's been a nice athlete suffer. And got Dylan Harper, who's had back-to-back 35-point games, but I think that Texas A&M is fully aware of it. Buzz Williams, being the coach that he is, he's going to look to take him away, and you've got Zarique Phelps and Wade Taylor, who are currently combining for 30 points, 7.5 assists out there in the backboard. Phelps really gives you nothing in terms of three-point shooting, and A&M, once again, a rough three-point shooting team at about 31.5%, but Taylor's been able to shoot 37% from the outside. You've got a bunch at does an okay job. I'll be able to generate some turnovers, as well as you've been able to have Jalen Carter be able to throw in there about a steal and a half per contest, and then Anderson Garcia, Henry Coleman, both of these guys give you about 7 boards per contest. For Rutgers, you've been able to have Lathan Somerville be able to do a solid job of providing some size, and they need it with Cliff Amarui. Now over at Alabama, he's been able to supply the team with right around about 4 or so rebounds per contest. But outside of Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, who have been amazing, like Harper 24.5 points per contest, Bailey find himself 18 points, 5 boards. You don't have anyone else that gives you north of 8.1 points per game. It's pretty much going to be 2 on 5 out there. I think that's just going to be a little bit too much. Rutgers running much better offense, only turn the ball over 9 times per contest, and their overall shooting still a little bit better. But again, when those 2 main guys don't take a shot, that's where things get a little bit harebrained, a little bit discombobulated, and I think that A&M is going to be able to scheme around that. I did set Texas A&M as a result as a 5.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number. It's somebody total 145.5 for Rutgers. I still think that they're going to be going back to just that rough and tumble defense of Steve Peichel. So I'm in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay it with A&M. 665, 666 on the betting board. Houston and San Diego State do battle from lovely Las Vegas, as you've got Houston as a 12.5 point favorite. Total on this game is 129, and I did set Houston as a 15.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay with San Diego State. They were able to pull off a nice surprise in the first game of this event, being able to take down Creighton, but I do think that you're going to see an angry Houston team that has been a little bit wobbly here in the early part of the season, losing 2 games already, but this is still a really good offense that has LJ Cryer that's able to bomb it from 3-point range, give you 13.5 points per game, and I mean, Jamal Shedd can't be replaced, but Milo Suzan has done a good job filling those shoes, 6 assists, 8.5 points per game for a team that's currently shooting 41.5% from 3. They're turning the ball over just 8.3 times per game, and for Houston, once again, one of the most brutal defenses in all of college basketball, going against the San Diego State unit that has their top scorer from a season ago, Reese Dixon Waters, at returns, currently out of the fold. They've been able to get a lot of production out of Nick Boyd, who's been able to give you 13.5 points per game, and BJ Davis stepped up in a big way. 4 boards, 15.5 points per game, and this is a San Diego State team that's actually shooting 39% from 3-point range. I just don't think that that's going to be long-lasting for them. I do think that you've got a little bit of upside with the 7-footer and Magoon Guath, who's a freshman that is going to be getting better as the season goes along. They bring in Wayne McKinney, who's over at San Diego, the Toreros, averaging 9 points per contest, shooting 40% from 3-point range. But Houston, they're one of the best teams year in and year out at being able to guard the 3-point line. You've got so many guys that just pull in their 5 to 6 rebounds per game, like Joseph Tugler, like Juwan Roberts, that I just don't think that San Diego State is going to be able to match up there either. And for Houston, I think that they turn this into a low-scoring, grind-em-out slog. They've given up 54 points or fewer in 3 out of their last 4 games, and I anticipate a little bit more of that here. Did set my total at 129.5, though, because I was alluding to it with this Houston team. Even though they're so great defensively, they have been able to shoot it really well from 3-point range. They have been running some very good, clean sets, and San Diego State, they themselves have shot it pretty well from 3. So, in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 15 with Houston. 667, 668 on the betting board. It is Alabama, and they're going to be playing against Oregon out here in lovely Las Vegas, and Alabama 5 to 6 point favorites. So on this game between 165 to 166. Semi-line at 8.5. I'm going to be willing to lay with Alabama. For Alabama, it's been touch and go to start the season. I've had to downgrade them a little bit, but I do think that 3-point shooting percentage is going to start to rise up, and they go up against an Oregon team that has good versatility with Nate Biddle, 7-footer that's able to give you 14 points, 9.5 boards, and from 3-point range, he overall this season has only shot 19% from 3, but the fact that you've got a 7-footer that's able to pop it from 3, that's something that the defenses need to respect. But Alabama, they've got their own versatility, and 6'11" Grant Nelson, 8 boards, 14.5 points, he's shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. Mark Sears, after a little bit of a slow start to the season, he's been able to get it going a bit more, as well as he's been able to log for the team about 17 points per game this season, and he had that 0 spot against Illinois, but he has been able to score 15 plus in now 4 out of the last 5 games, so it seems like he's been able to find his sea legs. Cliff Amarui down low, he's able to give you 6.5 rebounds per game. That's going to be tough for Oregon to be able to go up against, and for Oregon, to their credit, they're not turning the ball over a ton. They're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per game, which Jackson Shell said hasn't taken the next step forward offensively in terms of scoring, but it's giving up 4 assists, not turning the ball over. And then you've got Jaden Tracy, who's been able to shoot 39% from the outside, and Keyshawn Bartholomew, who missed much of last season, he's come back relatively strong as well. Oregon has been able to do a solid job of being able to generate turnovers, but I think that Alabama, a team that, despite the fact that they are one of the most up-tempo teams in all of college basketball, they just protect the ball. 12.5 turnovers per per game for their tempo is amazing. And Latrell Wrightsell shooting 41.5% per 3, 11.5 points per game, along with Aiden Holloway finding his bearings with his backcourt. I think is going to be too much for this Oregon team. So I'm willing to lay up to 8 with Alabama. I did set my total 164.5 for Alabama. I feel like this defense is much better than it was a season ago. So in on the under, and I'm going to be willing to lay with Alabama. These final two games are out there in Tempe, Arizona, and are off the board. 669, 670 on the card. Bowling Green is going to be taking on New Mexico State. This is from the great state of Arizona, and I set my total to where 146 or less. I am in on the over 147 or higher, the under, and with New Mexico State, made them a 2.5 point favorite, so willing to lay up to do with them 3 or more, taking the points with Bowling Green. Bowling Green is a team that has been outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis this year. New Mexico State very much looking to run. They need to reel in the turnovers. Did so yesterday. They had just 10 turnovers in that game, so that's a step in the right direction. And like what Robert Carpenter is bringing to the table, about 13 points, just under 8 rebounds per contest. He's been in college basketball for forever, and I do think that the Shemingas, Emmanuel and Nathan Sheminga, going to be able to control things down low. These two guys have been able to combine for well north of 10 rebounds per game. And Peter Filipowski has really been able to give you some nice production as well, right around 10 points, 7.5, 8 rebounds per game, and he's been able to light it up a little bit from three-point range as well. Flip side, you've got a Bowling Green team that they've been one of the better three-point shooting teams in all of college basketball, entered into yesterday, shooting well north of 36% from three-point range overall for the season. Fell with 1 second remaining to not cover against Weber Seton, went just 6 of 21 yesterday, but should be able to rebound in this one. You've got Derek Butler, who's been able to give you double figures, and he overall for the season shooting in that neighborhood about 40% from three-point range. I have to like what you're seeing out of Marcus Johnson as well. Little man has been able to shoot nearly 40% from three-point range. I say little man very, very jokingly, but team has not necessarily been the world's greatest on glass. You've had a guy in Sam Towns be able to give you about 6.5, 7 rebounds per game, and this has been a team that's been able to do a nice job taking control of the ball, only turned the ball over about 10.5, 11 times per contest, but was expecting quite a bit more out of Trey Thomas. He's only been able to give you about 8 points per contest after being the main returning guy from a season ago with about 11.5 points per contest. So this is a game where at a 2 or less, one to lay with New Mexico State, 3 or more, going to be willing to take those points with Bowling Green, and then 146 or less in on the over, 147 or higher the under. And this will be the last game on the normal Las Vegas betting board before you hit a break and the extra games. 671, 672. Weber State and Pepperdine do battle. So Weber State is a 3.5 point favorite. Willing to lay up to 3 with them. 4 more taking those points with Pepperdine, and then a 143 or less in on the over, 144 or higher the under for Weber State. Quite a bit of transition for this team without having Dylan Mitchell from a season ago, but does appear as though Blaze Threat along with Miguel Tomley have been able to find their footing. Tomley 16 points in the game yesterday. Took him a little bit of time to get going, but feels like he's been able to acclimate himself into the system after last season. He was over at Idaho State. Meanwhile, when it comes to Nigel Burris, he's just a knockdown shooter. He 2 seasons ago over at Idaho shot about 45% from three-point range, and right now he's shooting north of 50% from 3. That'll be going downward, but he's been able to do a nice job overall. Alex 2 gives you a little bit of size, so we'd like to see a little bit more rebounding out of him. He's been able to give you about 5.5 rebounds per game out of Dawson Kaler. Meanwhile, 2 only more around about 4 to 4.5 rebounds per game. So means to pick it up a little bit there. Flip side, you've got a Pepperdine unit that doesn't necessarily have a ton of size. They bring in Ed Schilling. He was a coach over there on the East Coast for quite a while, and he's brought with him quite a few guys that are supposed to be able to bomb it from three-point range. It's been a little bit hit or miss for them thus far this season, with Zion Pathé only being able to shoot right around about 30% from three-point range. But the guy that has really been able to step up, Stefan Torvik. He is a 6'8" combo player that's right now giving you about 20 points, 6 boards, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. So love what he's been able to bring to the table. Down low, you've got a guy like an Alfonso Fiore. He comes on over from Loyola Maryland. He's been able to give you about 3 to 4 rebounds per game, but Mo Odom has really been able to do a nice job to help run this offense, as he's giving out right around about 6.5 assists per game. Has never been really the world's greatest shooter. Last 2 seasons, shot below 30% from three-point range, but this year, more in the mid-30s from three-point range, and has been able to add in there some scoring pop, being able to give the team double figures each out of the last 3 games. So do like the way that they've been able to play there, and this is a Pepperdine team that they themselves are needing a little bit more help on the glass, and it appears as though Babacar Coulibaly is going to be able to provide that, giving the team about 7 boards per contest, but still do think that Weber State just has a little bit more in the backcourt and has been just a more consistent team in general. So want to lay up to 3 with Weber State, 4 more, taking those points with Pepperdine, and then 143 or less and on the over, 144 or higher the under. And now let's hit the extra games on the flip side right here on Let's Go Six with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the Decent Family Podcast. When I was asked by Uncommon Goods to do this read, I felt like, man, I am the perfect guy for this one, because with Uncommon Goods, they scour the globe for original, handmade, remarkable things. Somehow, some way, you know it's going to be perfect, and you're going to be supporting some of the little guys. And why I'm so perfect for it is, for those of you guys that watch everything that I do with my TikTok videos on the old Twitter/X, you'll notice I'm wearing all these low/mid-major college basketball jerseys, and Uncommon Goods, they're sort of like that for all of your goods for this upcoming season. They find you a nice variety of products. They're high quality, they're unique, oftentimes handmade. You're supporting a lot of, shall we say, smaller artists as well, and you're able to just find a home for a lot of different various things that if you're trying to look online thinking, man, where can I find this very unique thing? Uncommon Goods, they're going to be able to find that for you, and you're able to get 15% off your next gift by going to uncommongoods.com/coast. That is uncommongoods.com/coast, COAST. That gives you 15% off. Do not miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Heaps with myself, Greg Heaps Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. We've ran through the normal Las Vegas betting board of games. Now let's hit the extra games.
The normal betting board picks are complete, but there are some extra games today, so we go into the bonus.
306-501, 306-502. Southern is on the road against Louisiana Tech, and Louisiana Tech finds themselves as 13.5 to 14-point favorites. Total this game is 138.5. Semi-line at 16.5. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Louisiana Tech. Louisiana Tech has a Pacho man, and Daniel Pacho has been so incredible for the team. He's right now averaging a double-double. He's able to do a really good job as well of being a bit of a passer for this team as well, which I don't think a lot of people expected, and he's not even the top rebounder for this team. Caden Cooper is right now pulling in there about 8.5 rebounds per game. So for Louisiana Tech, they're getting production out of so many of these different guys. As for Bacho, he's giving you 2 blocks per contest, has made all their 3-pointers that he's taken, which I think is 1, but this is a team that overall in Louisiana Tech shooting about 34.5% from the outside. Amari Abraham, he's come over from the SEC, and he's just done it all. Pair of assists, 2.7 steals, 16 points per contest. Will Jeffries is able to give you 7 rebounds per game. Southern, they just don't stand a chance down low. They were a bottom 100 team with regards to rebound percentage a season ago, and right now you've only got one guy that's giving you 5+ rebounds per game, and Damari Jones. Now you do bring back the main point guard from a season ago, Tijane Diobasi. He's been able to give you about 10.5 points per game, 4 assists, so he's been able to do a nice job there. And you've also got further facilitation with Michael Jacobs coming in from the non-D1 ranks. 4 assists, 8.5 points per contest, but for Southern, they themselves turn the ball over about 13 times per contest, shooting about 34.5% from 3-point range. Cam Ambro, he's been able to give you 7.5 points per game, but expected a little bit more there. And with this Louisiana Tech team, being a team that is just so good at being able to defend both around the perimeter and on the interior, I do think that is going to take it out of a Southern team that's very much looking to run and gun. And Louisiana Tech, they've really launched their offense with 76+ points in 4 of their last 5 games as well. So circumstance where I do think they get a bit more of an up-tempo game, set by total 142.5, and on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 16 with Louisiana Tech. 306-503, 306-504. It is Colgate and Sam Houston State doing battle. This will be a neutral court game, and this game has no numbers up because both of these teams played yesterday, but I've got my handicap. I'm willing to lay up to 6.5 with Sam Houston, 7.5 or more taking the points with Colgate, and then 140.5 or less, and on the over, 141.5 or higher. The under, as this will be out there in Wilmington, North Carolina, by the way. But for Colgate, this is just not the same team that we've seen in past years. Held to 50 points yesterday, and prior to getting held to 50 points yesterday, shooting his collective 31.5% from 3. Still not turning the ball over a ton, but they just don't have that main guy like they've had in the past. It goes all the way back from when they had Jordan Burns a few seasons ago. It was Cummings, like guys like this. You have had a lot of guys that have just been able to come in there, be that main guy. Even last year in Braden Smith, now you just don't have that. Nikolai Louis Jacques has been able to give you about 10 points per contest. Doesn't give you anything on the boards, doesn't give you any facilitation. Parker Jones, about 10 points, 4.5 to 5 rebounds per game. He's been an okay 3-point shooter, but you just don't have that versatility like you've had in the past. Jeff Woodyard, he's able to give you 5.5 boards, but he's not a guy that's able to take you out to the perimeter. Meanwhile, Lamar Wilkerson for the Sam Houston State team, he's logging 19+ points per contest, and for Sam Houston State, it's a whole greater than the sum of it as far as rebounding approach, as you've got Dorian Finster, who comes in from Kansas State. It's giving you about 7 boards per contest, and entered into yesterday, shooting 47.5% from 3-point range again. Do you think that that's going to dry up a little bit with Sam Houston State? They entered into yesterday shooting north of 41% from the outside, but you've got Keon Scroggins who's able to give you about 4.5 or so rebounds per game. I like what I'm seeing right now to Marcus Boykin as well. He's giving out about 6 assists per game. He's giving you about 8 points per contest. Now, has been dealing with a little bit of an injury, was out of the fold yesterday, and I did handicap that in, or else I'd probably be setting Sam Houston State as closer to an 8 to an 8.5 point favorite. But even without him in the fold yesterday, the Sam Houston State team was still running pretty smoothly on offense, and I did think that Sam Houston State could have taken to a Colgate team that just, it's not the same three-point shooting team that they've been in the past, but Sam Houston State certainly launching a little bit more tempo with regards to their offense. So 140.5 or less in on the over, 141.5 or higher. The under willing to lay up to 6.5 for Sam Houston State, 7.5 or more. Taking those points with Colgate, 386.505, 386.506. Central Arkansas is on the road against Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, a 23-point favorite, totals between 148 to 149, and I set Tech as a 25-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay it with Georgia Tech. Now, Central Arkansas, after they had that West Coast road trip where they looked like one of the most sad and pathetic teams in all of college basketball, they look a little bit less sad and a little bit less pathetic. They've got a guy in Elias Cato who's able to give you a double-figure amount of points per game, but this is still a unit that they are consistently in the top 100 with regards to total possessions per game. They're consistently outside the top 300 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis, and they're shooting 26.5% from three-point range. That's a little bit less than savory. You have been able to get 15.5 points per contest out of Lane Taylor, who's thrown in there about 5.5 boards, 2.5 assists per game, and you've been able to get about 5.5 boards, 5.5 assists as well out of Braden Fajemi. He comes over and he's been able to give the team about 13.5 points per game, but also shooting about 22% from three-point range for a unit that is turning the ball over 12.5 times per game. They've been able to clean that up just a skoge, but for Georgia Tech, I do think that Bay Ndongo was able to give you 14 points, 7.5 boards at 6'8". He's able to give you a little bit of three-point shooting, and he's actually not a bad passer for a big man. He's going to be able to help this team out, and then Nathaniel George. You just need him to be that main facilitator because they bring in Javion McCollum. He was over at Oklahoma. He was used to having the ball in his hands quite a bit. I just feel like McCollum benefits a little bit more from being off the ball as he shoots 40+% from three-point range. George this year shooting more around about 34.5% from the outside, but that's not necessarily his forte. He's also got Luke O'Brien down low. He's dealt with a little bit of injury, might be out for this game. He's been able to give the team about 6.5 rebounds per game, but Kawasi Reeves, him being able to take some strides forward, going to be big for this team. Began his career at Florida. Last year over at Georgia Tech, 10 points per contest, shot 38.5% from three. Three-point shooting has been a little bit down, but his 6'7" versatility so big for a Georgia Tech team that only turned the ball about 11.5 times per contest. They need to be a bit more efficient with their three-point shooting, and I think that they will be against a Central Arkansas team that consistently does not guard the arc. I did set my total at a 151, so I'm in on the over, and I'm going to be willing to lay up to 24.5 with Georgia Tech. They're at 6.507, they're at 6.508. It is Vermont, and they play us in Northeastern. Northeastern, an underdog of 4 to 4.5 points, 128.5 to 129.5 is your total. And for Vermont, I set them as a favorite of 4.5 points, so willing to lay 4 and not a half a point more for Vermont. It has been a tumultuous start to the season for Mr. Becker and company, but with John Becker, I'm willing to still trust in him a little bit because this guy's gotten the job done year in and year out for Vermont. You know that they're not going to be a rough and tumble team down low, so they're going to have their issues with Harold Woods, who's been very good for this Northeastern team. 16 points, 8.5 boards, and for Northeastern, they have been one of the hottest shooting teams across mid-major college basketball this season. Shooting is a collective 36.5% from the outside. Each of your top 4 scorers are shooting at least 40% from three-point range. That includes William Kamori, who he's been dealing with a little bit of injury. He's missed the last 3 games, probably going to be missing for this game as well. He was averaging 13.5 points per contest before going down with injury, but beside Troutman, who was supposed to be one of, if not the top scorer for the team coming into the season, he missed the first 4 games. He's now back to the fold, but Yuri Fritz, he is the brother of Jaco Fritz, who used to be over at Canisius. He's only been able to give the team about a rebound and a half per contest. You need a little bit more there. And then for this Vermont team, I recognize that you don't have a ton of size down low, but you need to have more than one guy giving you north of 4 rebounds per game. You've been able to get a little bit more here with 4 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists out of Sam Alamutu, but he does need to give you just a little bit more there after he was very versatile a season ago, but they need him to step up with having guys like Matt Ferrado and company from a season ago out, but you got the TJs, TJ Hurley and TJ Long combining for about 26 points per contest. Long has been able to shoot 37.5% from three-point range. As a collective, Vermont, the 12.5 turnovers per game, that's just not Vermont basketball. I do think that they're going to clean it up against a Northeastern team that traditionally just has not been good at being able to generate turnovers and traditionally does give it up from three-point range. So I want to lay up to 4 with this Vermont team, and I did set my total at 132.5 for Northeastern, finding a lot of looks from three-point range, and they've been giving up a lot of them as well. So in on the over, and we're going to be willing to lay up to 4 with Vermont. 36.509, 36.510. It is Wisconsin playing us to Chicago State. Chicago State 35 to 35.5 point underdog. Some on this game is 148 to 148.5. for this Wisconsin team. I set them as a 34-point favorite. I just can't trust them to cover this much of a line, though. This Chicago State team is going to be becoming a fade sooner rather than later. For Chicago State, they're well outside the top 275 in terms of both points scored and points allowed on a per possession basis, and without their coach from the season ago, Gerald Gillian, things are going southward. So it's the old Rob Schneider quote of, "Oh no, we stink again." But that said, Jalen Forrest, he comes in from Presbyterian. He's been able to give you 9 points, 4 boards per contest. Problem is, he stirs the top of both categories with that regard, especially with Quincy Allen, the former top 200 recruit of Colorado, dealing with an injury. He was the only guy that's really giving you north of 4.1 rebounds per game. You just don't have a lot of facilitation as well. With the Chicago State team, nobody has been able to give you north of 2 assists per contest, as it's been the coach's son, and Gabe Spinelli. He's been able to give you 1.9 assists, 8.5 points per game. Flip side for Wisconsin, got a unit that even when they're cold with their three-point shooting, like we saw against Pittsburgh a few days ago, they're still able to find ways to be able to generate offense, with John Tonje being the main man. 23 points, 5.5 boards, shooting 40% from three-point range. Wisconsin just 9.5 turnovers per game, shooting 86.5% at the free throw line. It's a little bit of a new look Wisconsin team as well, because when you think Wisconsin, you think of that just slow, grimy style, and Wisconsin, while they're still not playing at like warp speed or anything like that, they've come into the 21st century. They've decided, you know what, we're going to be playing a little bit faster, 114th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Don't think that that's going to stick for the entirety of the season, but Noah Winter is able to give you 5.5 boards, 9.5 points per game. Stephen Krull, true 7-footer, great versatility, 8.5 points, 5 boards, 3.5 assists. He's been able to pop it from three-point range as well. And then John Blackwell being able to give you 16 points on a high 30s three-point shooting percentage as well. Rock solid for Wisconsin. Wisconsin's going to be able to get the job done probably pretty easily. Do think that now we're just starting to get up a little bit too lofty, and like I said, do think that Wisconsin with that tempo might dial it back just a skoch. So semi-total 144, I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to take the north of 35 here with Chicago State, 36-5-11, 36-5-12. Coastal Carolina is going to be playing us USC Upstate. Upstate does find themselves as 6-6.5 point underdogs on this game, is 147.5. Did semi-total 148, you're at the 147.5. Max, I'm willing to take the over on, but I'm going to be willing to take the over, but for Coastal Carolina, go ahead and set them as a 4-point favorite. I'm going to be willing to take the points. Coastal Carolina is a team that's in massive transition right now. Justin Gary, I thought, was a very good coaching hire in the offseason, but he's got pretty bare bones to be dealing with. Rasheed Jones has been able to give the team 13.5 points per game, but they don't have a point guard. Henry Abram and his 2 assists is right now leading the way, and for USC Upstate, they've got Mr. Dean. His first name is Mr., his last name is Dean. 18 points, 6.5 boards, 6'6" freshman. Comes in as you have Marty Richter, who was over at Drake last season, take over the program, and he brought with him a guy that I like in the backcourt in Chico Johnson. He's giving you about 6.5 points per contest, mid-30s three-point shooter. Overall, it's an Upstate team that they do need to cut down on the turnovers, about 15.5 turnovers per game, but Kamari Gregory has been able to give you 4 assists per contest and has a great last name. Britt Harris has been able to give you 11 points, 4 boards per game, and with this USC Upstate team, they're a team that is a little bit bereft of size, but it's not like this Coastal Carolina team is necessarily some sort of a dominant team either. You've got Denzel Harris, who's been able to give you about 7 boards, 10.5 points per game, but it's not like he's towering. Now, the guy that can really take it out of you is Ammenhauser. He comes on over as a 7'2" big man from Grand Canyon. He's been able to give you about 7 boards per contest, and he's done a good job of being able to stay out of foul trouble as well, but he's a little bit of a hit-or-miss guy himself for this Coastal Carolina team. Not like this is a unit that is shooting amazing with regards to their overall percentage as well, 42.5% from the floor. I've actually shot about 35.5% from three-point range, but they're playing at one of the slowest and grimiest styles in all of college basketball. USC Upstate, they're looking to run and gun, so it's a situation of something's got to give. I did set my total at 148. I do think that there's going to be a lot of open looks for both of these teams, and I think that there's going to be a lot of second chances for both teams, with Mr. Dean perhaps being the best player out there on the floor. So we'll take the points with Upstate, set them as a 4-point dog, and at 147.5 or less, I'm in on the over. 36-5-13, 36-5-14. You've got Binghamton and Long Island doing battle, and this is from Kirby Sports Center. Both of these teams played yesterday, so this game is off the board, but I've got my handicap at a 1 or less. I'm going to lay with Binghamton / take them as a money line underdog. 2 or more, I'm going to be taking the points with Long Island. And then with regards to this total, I set mine to where a 147 or less. I'm in on the over, a 148 or higher. I do like the under. For Long Island, they have been playing just so much better this year under the new associate coach in Gerald Gillian, as he brought over one of his guys in Brent Davis, who's been able to give the team north of a steal per contest. He's throwing in their 10 points per game. Long Island had it taken to them yesterday by Lafayette, so that was a little bit of a rough one, but all in all, this has been a team that has been able to get on the straight and narrow, for lack of a better term, for Long Island. It's not like this team has amazing rebounding or anything like that right now. Leading the way is Terrell Strickland with about 5.5 rebounds per game in that regard, but Malachi Davis is the best player out there on the floor entering into yesterday, averaging about 19 points, 3.5 assists, shooting 40% from three-point range. Flip side, you've got Ben Callahan-Gold, who has been gold in for this Binghamton team with right around about 13 points per game. He had a little bit of a rough one yesterday, but he's been able to give you some nice three-point shooting at 6'8". Doesn't really give you a lot of rebounding, but that's what Gavin Walsh is for. He's going to be the top man on the boards in this one, giving you about 10 points, 10 boards per contest, but nobody else for this Binghamton team really gives you north of 5 rebounds a game. Temu Chenery has a bit of versatility, 2.5 assists, 12.5 points, 5 boards, and entered into yesterday shooting 40% from 3, but the 15 turnovers per game, that's an issue for Binghamton as Long Island. They have been able to do one of the Gillian specials that he was playing when he was over at Chicago State, being able to generate some turnovers as this team is generating about 8 steals per game as well. So I think that that'll keep Long Island in this game. You have more down low with Binghamton, but you got more in the backcourt with Long Island. I'm willing to lay up to 1 with Binghamton, 2 or more taking the points with Long Island / taking Binghamton as a money line underdog if they are a dog, and with 148 or higher with regards to total, and on the under 147 or less, I'm going to be taking a look at that total over 306-515, 306-516. It is Elon, and they play against Navy. Navy and Elon played yesterday, so this is another game that's off the board, but I've got my handicap. 1 to lay up to 1 with Navy, 2 or more, taking the points with Elon, and then 141 or less in on the over, 142 or higher the under. Would not be surprised if Navy is the underdog once again, and I would be willing to take them right on the money line as they were an underdog yesterday against the Quakers of Penn, and they were able to dominate that game by a count of 86-78, and this is a Navy team that just all of a sudden is finding themselves with their three-point shooting. Don't think that they'll duplicate 15 of 32 from distance like they did yesterday, but Austin Benjini has been the main man, being able to supply 18.5 points per contest. He's able to give you some facilitation. I like what I'm seeing out of Lysander Reinstorm, who's able to give you about 6.5 points per game. He was one of the main guys from a season ago, and then Don Draper should be able to dominate things down low. He's able to give the team 6.5 boards. He generates a little bit over a steal per game. And then on the flip side for Elon, this is a really good three-point shooting team as well, but they do turn the ball over about 13.5 times per game, so it takes quite a bit of effort for them to be able to get those open looks. TJ and TK Simpkins entered into yesterday combining for about 33 points per contest, with one of them shooting about 35% from three-point range. Both of them are T. Simpkins, so makes it a little bit confusing, but that said, you've got Matthew Van Komen, who down low at 7'4". He's able to give you a little bit of rebounding, and he's been able to find himself. He began his career over at St. Mary's in Utah, couldn't get out there on the floor. It was a little bit uncoordinated, and so has a propensity to just give the ball away, but he doesn't really foul too bad, and he's been able to give the team nearly 3 blocks per contest, so has been a nice rim protector, but doesn't necessarily have the world's greatest cardio in the world. You've got Nick Dorn, who's been able to supply the team with about 17 points per contest, and Elon entered into yesterday shooting 38% from three-point range, but they also do give it up quite a bit from three-point range as well, and it's been an Elon team that's been very hit or miss with regards to their defense as well. Could only get to 56 points yesterday against Maine because Maine was able to do a nice job of turning them over. Navy not quite as good as Maine at being able to generate turnovers, but they are a team that they will sell for some of those turnovers, and I think that is going to be really posing an issue for Elon. So if Navy is a money line underdog, looking at them would be willing to take 2+ if Elon is an underdog, and then 141 or less in on the over, 142 or higher the under, 306-517, 306-518. It is Miami. They play also Charleston Southern. Charleston Southern, a 23.5 point underdog, 151 to 151.5 is the total. I set Miami as a 24.5 point favorite. I'm going to be willing to lay the number for Charleston Southern. They do have a guy that I like down low, and Tajay Kelly, who's been able to give you about 12 points, 7 boards per game, but with Miami, I do think that Lynn Kidd is going to be able to dominate down low. He is playing like anything but a kid, as he's been able to give you 7+ rebounds per game, and then the versatility of Brandon Johnson, who comes on over from East Carolina last year at 6'8", shot in the high 30s from three-point range. He's been able to do a nice job of just being able to give the team some inside-out offense with 9 boards, 9.5 points, not shooting it as well from three-point range, but I think that should rise up. That's big for a Miami team that's been very efficient this year, shooting 82% of the free throw line. They are only turned the ball over about 9.5 times per game. Jalen Blackman comes in after he was a 20+ point per game scorer over in the Atlantic Sun last season. He's shooting 46% from 3 on a little bit lower volume, 12 points per game. Matthew Cleveland has dealt with some injuries, so he's only been able to give you about 10 points per contest thus far, but Nigel Pack, he's packing it in. 4.5 assists, 44% three-point shooting, 15 points per game. He is going to be able to dominate the backcourt in this game that involves a guy in Charleston Southern's R.J. Johnson, who's been able to do a solid job in his own right. He's been able to give you about 4.5 assists, has been turning the ball over about 3 times per contest, but I do think that for this bunch in Miami, they do a nice job of just being able to force this team into some turnovers as well. That was a little bit of a forte of Miami, and they are looking to wash the bad taste out of their mouth after they went to the state of South Carolina and they lost 3 games. And I think that they're going to take out their frustrations on a Charleston Southern team that they're getting a bit more of. Dalen Berry, who's been able to come in, give the team 12 points, 3 assists per contest, good versatility, but it is a team that I was expecting more out of Lamar Odom Jr. coming in from Drexel, only about 7.5 points per contest. So I did set my total 152.5. Do think that this is going to be a bit of an up and down game, so I'm in on the over, and I'm willing to lay up to 24 with Miami, 306-519, 306-520. It is Howard. They play us to Mount St. Mary's. The Mount is an underdog of 5 points. Your total on this game between 142 to 142.5. Set Howard as a 5-point favorite. So right now we're seeing this mostly at a 5. I think that we might be seeing a few 5.5s pop up as well, and I saw a 6 a little bit earlier as well. That was very, very momentarily, but if we can get past a 5, I'd be willing to take the points with Mount St. Mary's. Mount St. Mary's has been able to get back to a lot of the things that got them to the NCAA tournament a few seasons ago. They're looking a lot more to the big men down low and just being able to win the rebound battle against a Howard team that they really don't have a ton down low. Bryce Harris has had to be Mr. Do-It-All for the team, 9.5 points, 6 boards. Last year he was a little bit of a better facilitator, and last year shot 37.5% from 3. That's down to less than 30% this season, but Howard does generate a few turnovers, and that's a issue for Mount St. Mary's. 17.8 turnovers per game. They're in the bottom 15 in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis, but you've got 3 guys in Dola Adbayo, along with Terrell Arda and Joey Cordelia, who are all giving you at least 7.5 rebounds per game. They should be able to dominate that battle. Dallas Hobbs has been able to give you 14 points, shooting 40% from 3-point range in the backcourt, and Xavier Lipscomb shooting just in the low 30s from 3-point range, but entered in the season career about 40% 3-point shooter, going up against a Howard team that perennially they're a bottom 125 team in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. Like the versatility of the LaSalle transfer and Anwar Gill, 9.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, and for Howard they're currently shooting 38.5% from 3-point range, but they too turn the ball over about 15 times per game. Marcus Dockery has been able to give you 15 points per game, but a little bit of a one-trick pony, and for Howard they've been dealing with a little bit of injury themselves. They were expecting to have out there Munir Hima. He began his career over at Duquesne along with Syracuse at 6'11". He'd be able to give them quite a bit down low. Currently is not able to do that, but you do have Tom Campbell, who at 6'9", has a little bit of stretchability. 5.5 to 6 points per contest, a few boards, but he's been in and out of the fold as well, so that's been very much hurting the team. And I do think that for Mount St. Mary's, getting anything north of 5, they should be able to hold in this game despite their turnover woes. And I do think that the turnovers causes this to be a little bit of a grimier game, but in the end, you've got a Howard team that's looking to fly, and a Mount St. Mary's team that over the last 24 or so months, they've been cranking up their tempo a little bit more as well as a program. So I'm going to be willing to take anything north of 5 here with Mount St. Mary's, and you're at the 142.5 in on the over. 306-521, 306-522. It is Fort Wayne. They're on the road against East Texas A&M. East Texas A&M, an 8.5 to a 9.5 point home underdog, and total on this game, you're going to be finding it at a 148.5 to a 149, and I did set my total 149.5. I do like the over for Fort Wayne. They've been much better at being able to take care of the ball over the last 2 seasons with Rasheed Bello, the D2 transfer from UW Parkside, coming in, giving the team double figures, 3+ assists per contest. Love what he's doing. And now you've got a Purdue Fort Wayne team that's a little bit better on the glass with Eric Mulder doing a solid job with 9 rebounds per game. That's a big reason why I did set my line at more of a 13.5. I'm going to be willing to lay. East Texas A&M has actually held in there with some power conference teams, and you've got a little bit more down low. Josh Taylor coming in from East Tennessee State, 6 points, 5 boards per contest, but I expected him to be a little bit more of a dominator. Scooter Williams Jr. was a top 50 junior college transfer according to JUCORecruiting.com, and he's the main facilitator, but you need a little bit more than 2.5 assists per contest for a team that turns the ball over 17 times per game and shoots 27% from 3-point range. IPFW, aka Fort Wayne, they were a top 50 team in all of college basketball in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis last season, and they're still generating about 8 steals per game this season. You've been able to have a lot in the backcourt with Quentin Morton Robinson, still being able to give you a double figure amount of points. Jalen Jackson has really become a nice force multiplier, being able to give you 19 points per contest. It's a Fort Wayne team that's shooting 38.5% from 3, shooting 82% of the free throw line. They should be able to get the job done, especially with having Mulder being able to give you a little bit more down low. So I'm going to be willing to lay up to 13 points here with Fort Wayne, and you're at this 149.5. I do think that Fort Wayne generates some turnovers, turns that defense into offense. I'm willing to go over on the 149. 306-523, 306-524. It is Nichols on the road facing off against Louisiana. Louisiana finds themselves in a pick'em game / as a 1-point favorite. Total on this game between 148 to 148.5. set Louisiana as a 1.5 point favorite. Not willing to go really past the 1/pick'em number, but I'm willing to take Louisiana on their own floor. For Nichols, they've got a guy in Jamal West that I really like. He has good versatility last year, 12 points, 5+ rebounds per game. And for this team, they added a few pieces via the transfer portal that have just been a little bit banged up in general, so that's been hurting them quite a bit. For Louisiana, they do lose 4 of their top 5 scorers from the season ago, and they do need to find their bearings in terms of who's going to be facilitating this offense, because Kentrell Garnett has traditionally been a little bit more of an off-the-ball scorer, and for his career, north of a 40% three-point shooter. That's dropped a little bit with him having to try to control the offense, but it does feel like they're starting to find a little bit more down low as they've been able to get Karan Ratliff going. He's been able to give the team 6 points, 4 boards at 6'8", shooting about 33% from three-point range, generates a CO per contest, so he's been able to do a nice job being able to give the team a little bit of shiftiness. Xavier Cooks down low, who comes in from Jackson State, he's been able to give you about 4 boards per contest as well, so you do have some upside pieces with Louisiana that have been able to help out the cause. Meanwhile, on the flip side for Nichols, Byron Ireland, he's back from last year's backcourt. He's been able to give the team 11.5 points per game, and for Nichols, they used to be a team that under Austin Clonch was one of the best in all of college basketball at generating turnovers. They're getting back to that a little bit more, and they've taken care of the ball themselves, turning the ball over just 10.5 times per contest, but you've got Ike Cornish, who just has never really lived up to his billing, 9.5 points per game, but not necessarily a great three-point shooter. And Robert Brown has regressed a little bit from last year as well. Brown last year, 14 points on 40% three-point shooting, down to about 11 points in the mid-30s with regards to his three-point shooting, with 11 points or fewer in each of the last 4 games. So hasn't been in great form. This is also a Nichols team that outside of West, you don't really have anyone else other than Mekhi Collins, who's giving you 6 rebounds per game, that is really able to pull in there a lot of boards either. So Louisiana's issues on the boards not going to be as exposed in this game. So it is a circumstance where I'm going to be willing to trust in Louisiana at home, set them as a 1.5 point favorite, and did set my total at a 147.5 here at the 148. I'm in on the under. 306, 525, 306, 526. East Tennessee State plays us Austin P. Austin P, a 9.5 point dog. Total on this game between 134.5 to a 135.5. Set my line at 6.5. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Austin P. This is a unit that is playing at a bottom 100 pace in terms of total possessions per game, but I absolutely love the way that Corey Gibson has been able to run the system. Ansel Emmanuel has been able to give you a few rebounds, and now they've got a guy that is able to do it all in LJ Thomas. He comes in from NC State, 20 points, right around about 4.5 boards, 3.5 assists per game. They go up against an ETSU team that they're going to have a little bit of a leg up on the boards. You've got Kieran Boyd along with Jaden Seymour, who were able to combine for 14 rebounds per game, and Seymour has really stepped it up with his three-point shooting. Last year, ETSU was in the bottom 50 in terms of three-point shooting percentage, now shooting 36.5% from the outside. You've been able to have a Peterson, great last name, in Kamari Peterson, step up with 3.5 assists, 19 points per game, and they bring in the buggy man, John Buggs III, which everywhere he goes, he just pops it from 3, shooting 39.5% from the outside, 10.5 points per game, but it's a top-heavy team. They've got 4 guys that are generating north of 10.5 points per game. Then they've got Kurt Lewis, who's been able to give you 4.5 points per contest, but he's been dealing with injury, and those are the only guys that really give you north of 4.5 points per game. So that's a little bit of an issue. Austin P is a little bit top-heavy as well, but Isaac Haney from the outside, he's able to shoot 45%. He's been able to give the team 13 points per game. I do think that you're going to be able to get a little bit more moving forward out of this team when you get Cy Witt back, who he should be out for this game once again. I'd be surprised if he comes back, but I do think that there's a bit of upside with Anton Brookshire as well, former top 350 recruit of Missouri. He's come into Austin P, and he's only given the team about 4.5 points, 2.5 rebounds per game, but he's a guy that 2 seasons ago over at Iona was shooting in the high 30s from three-point range, and he's coming off of a 13.5 assist game against UT Arlington a few nights ago. Feels like he's really starting to be able to find it. I think that he's really the guy that could be a spark for an Austin P team that's done a good job of doing the little things, shooting 75% of the free throw line, turning the ball over just 9.5 times per contest, and I do think that for Austin P, they're going to be able to hold in there in the backcourt with ETSU, which will allow them to cover this game. Set my line at 6.5, so I'm going to be willing to take the points with Austin P. With ETSU's much improved three-point shooting, I'm in on the over, set my total 138.5, 306, 527, 306, 528. UTSA, meet me for the Road Runners. They play us to Houston Christian. Houston Christian, an underdog of 12.5 to 13 points, and total on this game, going to be finding it at a 149. Got a Houston Christian team that is playing all sorts of slow right now, and a UTSA team that's one of the fastest teams in all of college basketball. So something's got to give. Did set my total 153.5. I do think that Houston Christian is going to be able to find some holes in this very holy UTSA defense to be able to make some threes, as they're currently shooting as a collective 28.5% from the outside. You do have a nice scorer, though, in Elijah Brooks, who's been able to log for the team about 12 points, 4.5 rebounds per game. It's a Houston Christian team that does not have a lot of size, so they don't have a single guy that's giving you north of 5 rebounds per game. So for a UTSA, Janavius Smith, who's been able to pull in there at 10.5 rebounds per game for the team. He should be able to win that battle, and he also did shoot about 37.5% from three-point range at Buffalo last season. Primo Spears is by far the best scorer in this game, 22 points per contest. Now, he's a guy that occasionally can give you like 20 points on 20 shots. He sometimes does that, but you've also got Damari Monsanto, who a few seasons ago when he was at Wake Forest, he was just one of the best scorers in all of college basketball from three-point range. He's been dealing with some injuries. He's starting to regain his footing, and then Raekwon Horton, a 6'6" combo player that comes in from James Madison. He's been able to log about 9.5 points, 6 boards per contest. It's a UTSA team with plenty of firepower in terms of offense. Defensively, it's just been a complete and utter sieve for them. HOU Christian has still a few guys from last year's roster that are used to playing super-duper up-tempo, and it's not like their defense has been sterling either, giving up 74+ in now 3 of their last 4 games against D1 teams. You've got a UTSA team that's slowing down for absolutely nobody, so I do think the UT San Antonio gets their style, gets their pace, and they get the job done by double figures. Set my line at 13.5, so going to be willing to lay with UTSA, and maybe my total 153.5, also in on the over. 3-6-5-29, 3-6-5-30, another game that'll make my write-ups as Albany is going to be on the road against Georgetown. Georgetown, a 12.5 to 13-point favorite total on this game, between 145 to 146. I was able to get this at a 144.5, and I wrote up the over, but still like it here. You've got an Albany team that last season was in the top 10 in terms of total possessions per game. They've been slowed down a little bit, but both of these teams, if you look at their schedules, they've just played against really slow competition. Like Georgetown is in the bottom half of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game, but that's because he played against Notre Dame, Fairfield, Mount St. Mary's, Wagner, especially Wagner. That has really slowed them down. I do think that both of these teams are going to start to fly a little bit more. And for Georgetown, we should see some upside with their 28.7% three-point shooting, considering their top 4 scorers, 3 of them shooting at least 35.7% from three-point range. Malik Mack seems to be reeling it in with the turnovers, still about 2.8 turnovers per game, but it's giving you about 12.5 points, 4 assists over the last 4 games, 3 turnovers or fewer in every single one of them. And then you've got a really nice freshman in Thomas Sorber, who has been able to soar. 15 points, 8 boards, 3 assists. I did set my line at 10, though. I'm going to be willing to take the points with Albany. They've been dealing with a few injuries here early on this season, as Amari Marshall was out for the first 2 games of the season. He's back. He's giving you double figures, much like he did 8 seasons ago. You were dealing with a little bit of an injury to Aaron Reddish as well. He's back as well. Another guy that last year he was able to give the team about 7.5 points, 3.5 boards per contest. And then Byron Joshua, the transfer that comes on over from the SWAC in Elkhorn State. He's been able to do a nice job helping run this offense. 3 assists, about 14 points per contest. It's an Albany team that's collective. They're shooting only about 32.5% from 3, but they keep it clean. They're turning the ball over just 9 times per contest. They also foul a ton. Albany in the top 20 in all of college basketball in terms of free throws allowed on a per possession basis. That should allow Georgetown to be able to get a lot of opportunities with the clock stop. It is a Georgetown team that's gone to at least 79 in 2 of their last 3 games. Lone exception against Wagner, and that's because Wagner is so stinking slow that it's not even funny. I've got an Albany team that I feel like they're starting to crank up their tempo with them, playing an 81-77 slobberknocker against American a few days ago. So I'm in on the over. So my total 152. Do think that for Albany, they're going to have a little bit of a tough time down low, but I do think that the backcourt matches up relatively well with Joshua and his ascension. So willing to take those points at my line at 10 with Albany, and I'm going to be looking at the over and wrote that up. 306-531, 306-532. Penn is going to be playing us a Maine. Maine hopes to not get mained, as we don't know how big of an underdog they're going to be, but they're most likely going to be an underdog. I set Penn as a 2.5 point favorite, so willing to lay up to 2 with them, 3 or more. Take the points with Maine, 138 or less, in on the over, 139 or higher, the under. Both of these teams played yesterday, and for Maine, they went out there, got the job done as an underdog against Elon, and Penn was the favorite against Navy, and they did not get the job done. For Maine, one of their specialties is being able to generate turnovers. Kellen Tynes, 2 seasons ago, led all of college basketball in steals, and he had 7 yesterday, along with 13 assists, 14 points. He very nearly had a triple-double with steals, so he has been able to do that. Now for Maine, you don't necessarily have a ton down low for this team, but you got Keon Burns, who's come on over from Long Island. He's been able to do a nice job supplying for the team right now, 12 points, 7.5 boards per contest, and then Jaden Clayton has been a nice double-figure scorer in the backcourt. Had just 3 points yesterday, but all in all, this is a team that's really coming together, with AJ Lopez also being able to give you about 14 points per contest. And then with this Penn team, you tell that they're missing all those guys from a season ago, not having Clark Slazier anymore, no longer having out there in the backcourt as well someone like a Tyler Perkins. That really takes it out of you. Nick Spinoza has some good versatility at 6'9". He had 16 points, 13 boards against Navy yesterday, and he's been able to give you about 2.5 assists per game as a little bit of a point forward for the team. But it's clear that this Penn team does not have the three-point shooting that they've had in the past few seasons, especially when they had Jordan Dingle a few seasons ago. have been able to have Dylan Williams be able to bust out a little bit more. He's been able to supply the team with about 35% three-point shooting. Comes in as a non-D1 transfer. You don't find that very often. And Ethan Roberts, who comes on over from Army, he's been able to give the team 15-plus points. He's shooting in the high 30s from three-point range as well, but it's a Penn team that consistently is outside the top 275 in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. This is a Maine team that's playing one of the slower paces in all of college basketball and have just been able to put teams in a headlock. They have given up 70 points or fewer in, I believe, all but one of their games thus far this season. So, situation of something's got to give. Penn has been held to fewer than 70 points in 3 out of their last 4 games, so 138 or less than on the over, 139 or higher the under. With Penn, 1 to lay up to 2 with them, 3 or more, taking those points with Maine. 306-533, 306-534. Texas A&M Corpus Christi plays us a Prairie View. Prairie View is an underdog of 16 to 16.5 points. 167 to 169 is your total. Did set my total at a 163 now. Prairie View number 1 in all of college basketball in terms of total possessions per game. Texas A&M Corpus Christi, they're not slowing down for anyone as well, but I just don't think that you've got enough efficiency with both of these offenses to be able to get the job done. As right now for this Prairie View team, they have been rough in terms of their overall shooting, and it's a Prairie View team that they've cleaned up some of the turnover woes. Only about 10.5 turnovers per game. For their style and their tempo, that's actually really good. You've got a 44.5% three-point shooter, and Nick Anderson is giving you 20 points, 5 boards per contest, so do have to like what you're seeing there. And then Orlando Horton has been able to give you about 4 assists, 11 points per contest. He has been able to come in there and do a nice job being able to run this offense as well, but it's also a Texas A&M Corpus Christi team that they're looking to play fast. They take a lot of threes, but they only shoot about 33% from the outside. But they play a high steals sort of game as well. Both of these teams are really feasting on the other team, committing mistakes. For Corpus Christi, last year they were a top 40 team in terms of turnovers forced on a per possession basis. Same goes for Prairie View, and you've got a Corpus Christi team that should be able to control the glass with Gary Clark. Last season giving the team 8 rebounds per game. This year down to about 5.5 boards, but it's still supplying the team with about 14 points per game. Stephen Giwa has been out of the fold for quite a while. He came back as a non-D1 transfer, and he in his first game out there, 1.7 boards, like what I'm seeing there. And then Owen Dees, he's been able to give you about 3 assists, 10 points, 5.5 boards. That's a 6'8", sort of do-it-all sort of guy. He's been really one of the main facilitators for the team. He's been able to take the load off of some of the guys like Jordan Roberts that are playing off the ball. You've been able to get 5.5 assists per game out of Isaac Williams, who does a nice job generating some steals as well. But again, it's a Corpus Christi team that they don't necessarily shoot at the world's greatest, and both of these teams have been playing harebrained and frenetic games, but feels like Corpus Christi over the last 2 games have been able to really dial in with regards to their defense, and I think the Prairie View is sick of giving up 90-plus points as they've done that for the last 5 games, and for the Prairie View offense, I think that they're going to be turning the ball over a ton in this game as well. So do you think that you get a lot of sloppiness with a game that is going to involve a ton of possessions? Set my total at 163 in on the under, and with Corpus Christi, I set them as a 17-point favorite. They're a much advanced version of Prairie View, so want to lay the 16 and in on the under. 306-535, 306-536. Lafayette is going to be playing us at Niagara. No nerves up on this game. These 2 teams played yesterday, but I've got my handicap. Set Niagara is a 3-point road favorite with a total of 137. So 1 to lay up to 2.5 with Niagara, 3.5 or more. Taking those points to Lafayette, and then 136.5 or less, and on the over 137.5 or higher. The under with this Niagara team. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams on the road in all of college basketball, have been for the last few seasons. As for Niagara, last year they shot as a collective 38% from 3-point range on the road. Thus far this season going into yesterday, they were shooting about 40% as a collective from distance. As you've been able to have Oldudun be able to step up. He's been able to give the team about 13 points per game. He's shooting 40% from 3-point range. Absolutely love what he's bringing to the table. He was a big part of them being able to knock off Binghamton yesterday. And then Jahari Williamson, he comes on over from Valparaiso, where he was a nice spot up 35.5% 3-point shooter. He's shooting well north of 45% this season. He's been able to supply the team with 13 points per game. Now, where this team is vulnerable, it's down low. They don't have a single guy that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game, but for Lafayette, the 7-footer and Justin Vanderbond, he's been missing due to injuries. So Misha Badonstin, he's been able to come in. He had 6'11", has been able to give you about 7 boards per game. He doesn't really give you a lot on the offensive side of things, so only about 5.5 points per game, which you don't need too much of. Lafayette, one of the slowest teams in terms of possessions per game in all of college basketball. Vanderbond returning yesterday should be able to lift the load off of him a little bit as well, as he came in off the bench in that game, and you've been able to have Devin Hines be able to be that nice sort of lead guard in terms of the scoring, being able to give you about 12 points per contest. You got Ryan Pettit, who's taken a little bit of a back seat with that regard after last year. He was able to give the team some nice ancillary production. He's been able to generate a pair of steals per game to be able to help out a Lafayette defense that has been able to do a nice job turning teams over. They do give up a lot of looks from 3-point range, though. I think that that's where Niagara is going to be able to knock them down and win a little bit of a lower possession game. So semi-total where 136.5 or less, and on the over 137.5 or higher, the under end with Niagara 1 to lay up to 2.5 with them, 3.5 or more taking the points with Lafayette. 3-6-5-37, 3-6-5-38. Florida Atlantic is going to be playing us the Florida Gulf Coast. Gulf Coast, an underdog of 11 points on off game between 143 to 143.5. So Florida Atlantic is a 14.5 point favorite. I'm going to be one to lay the number. This is a nice rivalry matchup between these two, but I do think that for Florida Atlantic, they are going to be able to dominate down low with Baba Miller. His 6'11" size, being able to pull in there a whole bunch of rebounds with about 7.5 boards per contest for a Florida Gulf Coast team that they lose Zach Anderson from a season ago. They lose Andre Weir from 2 years ago, and they just have not really replaced that size with anything other than Keyshawn Kellman, who's a very rock-solid player down low. He's been able to give the team right around about 10.5 points, 5.5 rebounds per game, but he missed the team's last game after he was limited on, I believe, the Northeastern game, and looks like he's unlikely to be able to go in this one, and that's a big issue for them because they don't really have anything else. Like, you've got Dalian Johnson, who's able to play off the ball, 13 points, 35% three-point shooter, gives you absolutely nothing down low. That means that Jevin Munoz, who comes in as a 6'4", a little bit of a do-it-all guy from Delaware State, he's been able to give you like 9 points, 6 boards, 4 assists per game. He has to do even more down low, and that's not easy, and I was expecting much more of Michael Duex. He has been able to give the team about 5.5 rebounds per game, comes in as a 6'5" sort of stretch player from Northern Iowa, but he just has not been able to find it. Like 2 years ago, he was a double-figure scorer, fell off the map last season, and this year has been somewhere between A and B, and they have to match up with the Florida Atlantic team that has 5 separate guys, give you 10 plus points per contest. Wallen Walker is able to give you about 4.5 assists, 13 points, and then Caleb Glenn off the ball shooting 38.5% per 30 with his 13 points per contest. Kai Tandy, he was that top scorer over at Jacksonville State season ago. He's shooting 40% per 3. The all-SWAC player and Ken Evans has been able to give you 3.5 assists per game. Now Florida Atlantic does turn the ball over about 13.5 times per contest, but they play very frenetically. They're a top 10 team in terms of total possessions per game, and not having Kelman down low, that means that Florida Atlantic much more likely to be able to get their up-tempo style. So I set my total 148.5. I'm one to take the over, and with this Florida Atlantic team, one to lay up to 14 with them. 3-6-5-39, 3-6-5-40. This is from out there at Mohegan Arena out there in Pennsylvania. Bucknell and Siena do battle, and for Bucknell, they're a 3.5 point favorite total on this game between 132 to 132.5. This is out there in Bucknell's home state, but can I set this number at 2? I'm going to be willing to take the 3+ with Siena. I really like what I've seen out of the Siena team thus far this season under the tutelage of Jerry McNamara, the legend over at Syracuse. And for Bucknell, they're going to be able to win the battle down low. You've got a 7-footer, Noah Williamson, who's able to give you a little bit of 3-point shooting, but has just supplied 15.5 points, 7.5 boards, 2 blocks per game. And even though he can shoot threes, doesn't mean that he necessarily should. He's shooting 16% from 3-point range, but team has been without their main point guard in Elvin Edmonds over the last 3 games. He's been giving out about 3 assists, 9 points per contest. He's never been a great 3-point shooter, but he helps out. Someone like Josh Pasco has had to take over the mantle at the point guard spot, 14 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists over the last 3 games. He's given out a combined about, I believe, 14 assists in these last 3 games. Has turned the ball over a little bit, but he's seen a little bit of a dip down in terms of scoring without having Elvin Edmonds in the fold, because now he has to try to get the ball to Ian Mota, who is a 6'6" combo player that's shooting north of 40% from 3-point range. And for the Siena team, they've already had some nice overtime triumphs over the likes of Brown and also Bryan. And then you've got Major Freeman, who's a top 50 junior college transfer according to JUCOrecruiting.com, doing a nice job helping out off the ball, 34% 3-point shooter with about 14 points per contest. This team has been looking to find a little bit more of their identity in terms of their facilitation, and Justice Schultz has been able to do a nice job of being able to show that off. A guy that really comes in as a 6th man, but giving you 13.5 points, 3.5 assists, and he's from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, so a little bit of homecoming for him in this one as well. You've been able to get quite a bit down low with a hole is greater than some of its parts approach with regards to rebounding, along with Reed Descharme, who comes over from Xavier. He off the ball has been able to give you about 6 points per contest, and seemingly has been improving with every single game. I do think that with the Siena team just having all the depth that they do, and right now Bucknell dealing with that injury to Elvin Edmonds, that is going to allow them to remain lively. Now, I do think that Siena might have a little bit of that pixie dust starting to run on as they've lost 4 straight games, and the offense has been a little bit rough. 64 points or fewer in each of their last 4 games. Got a Bucknell team that's been having it taken to them recently in terms of the defensive department. So did set my total 140. Do think that both teams get a lot of open looks from 3-point range, so I'm in on the over. Out with the Bucknell. Can only set them as a 2-point favorite, so won't take the 3+ here with Siena, 3-6-5-41, 3-6-5-42. Bellarmine is on the road against Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky, a 8.5 to a 9-point favorite. Total on this game between 136.5 to a 137. Set my line at 6.5. Gonna be won't take those points with Bellarmine. With Northern Kentucky, you do have, in my opinion, the best player out there on the floor, as you've got St. Vincent, who just is able to transform a game. He's able to give you double figures, 2+ steals per contest, throws in there 4 assists, but this is also a Northern Kentucky team that they just haven't been able to find their bearings on offense. They're 1-5 for a reason. Now, they played some very tough competition thus far, so I wouldn't read just too much into that, but they're shooting 28% from 3 with 15 turnovers per game, despite the fact that they're a little bit of a lower tempo team. I thought that LJ Wells was going to be able to give you a little bit more. He has not played Wells after last year. He gave you 8.5 points, 5.5 boards, and shot 40% from 3. That is now 6 points, 5 boards, and he's shooting less than 30% from 3-point range. Trey Robinson has been able to give you about 7.5 rebounds per game, but other than Wells, he's the only other player that gives you north of 5 rebounds per game. And for Bellarmine, typically this is a team that gets bludgeoned on the glass, but Gert off with him being able to give you 6 boards per contest at 6'8", should be able to hold his own. And then you've got the versatility of 6'7" Jack Karzinski. He doesn't give you a lot on the glass. Would like to see a little bit more there, but the William and Mary transfer has stepped in for Bellarmine. 17 points on 45.5% 3-point shooting. Northern Kentucky might not have too many answers for that. It's a Bellarmine team that they are turning the ball over 15 times per game. They have really got to reel that in. You've got Dylan Branson, who's a 6'5" combo player that when he's over at Southeast Missouri State, was a mid-30s 3-point shooter. He's been able to give the team about 6.5 points, 4 boards per contest, so he's been able to do a relatively rock-solid job there. And for Bellarmine as a whole, they're shooting 82% at the free throw line, so if they can find a way to be able to get to his charity stripe, they'll be just fine in this game. And then you've also got Billy Smith, who's at 6'7". He's been able to give you about 12 points per contest. This is a Northern Kentucky team that they do gamble for quite a few steals. As a result, they do put a lot of teams on the free throw line. They just have not been able to score on anyone thus far this season, but you've got a Bellarmine team that they're turning the ball over a ton. They have been really looking to crank up their offense, 68+ points in 4 of their last 5 games. So it's a good old situation of something he's got to give. I did set my total at a 136.5. Here at the 137, I'm going to be in on the under, and at 7+, we'll take those points with Bellarmine. 36-5-43, 36-5-44. Georgia plays host to Jacksonville. Jacksonville is a 16-point underdog total on this game between 144 to 144.5, and with Georgia, made them a 17-point favorite. Now I'm willing to lay much more than the 16, but I'm going to be willing to lay it. This is a Jacksonville unit that is looking to play at one of the slower paces in all of college basketball. Meanwhile, for Georgia, they've been able to find their sea legs in terms of backcourt, as they've got a really nice freshman, and Asa Newell, who has come in, giving the team 16 points per game, throwing in their 6.5 boards, a little bit over a steal, a block per game. Not really going to pop it from 3-point range, but that's why you've got Tyron Lawrence along Dakota LeFew, a pair of guys shooting between 35.5 and 36.5% from 3-point range. LeFew comes in from Mount St. Mary's, a little bit more of an off-the-ball scorer. Lawrence is giving you more like 3.5 assists, 11.5 points, 5 rebounds per game. And Blue Kane, he's a nice 3-point shooter that's shooting 37% from the outside. Now he's giving you a little bit more down low with 5 rebounds per game. And this is a Georgia unit that you pretty much have 5 different guys that are giving you at least 5 rebounds per game. For Jacksonville, that's typically their forte, as Stephon Payne has been able to give you 7.5 rebounds per game. And then you've got the main scorer in Robert McCray, who last season gave the team 18+ points per game. Still had 17.5 points, 5.5 boards, 5 assists, so he's doing it all. But for Jacksonville, 15 turnovers per game as a little bit of a lower tempo team. That's just very much doomsday for them. They've got the Dayton transfer in Zim Nakoji, who he comes in and he's been able to give the team 10 points, 4.5 boards per contest. It's been rock solid after pretty much being in the shadow of Deron Holmes last few seasons. And for Jacksonville, to their credit, they have given up 64 points for fear in 3 of their last 4 games, with the lone exception coming in overtime. But you've also got a Georgia unit that they've been able to do a nice job defensively as well. But offensively, they've been able to get past the 77-point plateau in 3 out of their last 5 games. So it's a good old situation of something he's got to give. Did set my total at a 143. I do think that this is going to be a lower possession game. I did set my total at 143, so I'm in on the under, and I'm willing to lay the 16 with Georgia, set them as a 17-point favorite, 3-6-5-45, 3-6-5-46. It is UConn, and they play us in Maryland Eastern Shore. The Shore is a 37 to 38-point underdog. So this game between 144 to 144.5. Set my line at 34.5. I had to drop my stock on UConn, but we do know that with UConn this season, when they've been playing outmatched teams, they have completely bludgeoned them. When they play against real teams, it's not been so great. And for Maryland Eastern Shore, first few games, they were looking rock solid. They were holding in there against some better competition, and then against Illinois and Arkansas, they got completely flattened. So something's got to give. I do like the fact that Maryland Eastern Shore kept the point guard and coaching combo together, as you had Cleo Hill take the job from Winston-Salem, brought over with him his point guard Casey Shaw, who's been able to do a nice job. For Casey Shaw, 18.5 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, shooting in the mid-30s from 3-point range. The last 2 games have been less than 6 Avery, but all in all, he's been able to do a solid job given the circumstances, and this team is going to lose a battle down low, but you've got a pair of guys combining for about 12 rebounds per game, as you've been able to have the Austin Peay transfer and Jalen Ware along Christopher Flippin be pretty flipping good with that regard for Maryland Eastern Shore. Turn the ball for 12.5 times per contest. That's not too bad. They have been one of the least efficient defenses in all of college basketball, though that's a big reason why I did set my total at 152.5. I'm going to be in on the over. I think that UConn is going to be very mad. I think that they're going to look to make a statement in this game. If you look at the bye games that they played thus far, they played 4 of them. They've scored 90-plus points in all but one of them. This is a UConn team that should be able to feature a lot of Alex Caravan with 16 points, 4 boards, 3.5 assists per contest. Overall for UConn, they're shooting 36.5% from three-point range, and because things were so bad for them out there in Hawaii, I do think that they're going to be looking to make a statement. But again, they're having to come back from Hawaii. They haven't even had necessarily like 72 to 96 hours to be able to fully unwind from all of that. It's a little bit of a body clock game for them, so I do think that there's going to be a little bit of effects there. Hassan Diarra is able to give you 4.5 assists per contest. He does a rock solid job there. And then you've got one of the most efficient scorers in all of college basketball, and Samson Johnson, who actually shot north of 70% from the floor a season ago. UConn is going to win this game. They're going to win it handily. I think that this number is just a little bit out of whack, though. Set my line at a 34.5. I'm willing to take the points. And again, do think that UConn is going to be boisterous with their offense. Like the over, set my total 152.5. 365.47, 365.48. Lehigh is going to be playing against Marist. Marist is a underdog of a point/a pick'em, and totals between 139 to 139.5. Set my line at 2.5 with Lehigh being the favorite, so we'll take them as a pick'em / a 1-point favorite with Lehigh. You've got, in my opinion, just the best feature guys in this game, as Brandon Whitney-Sydney is coming off of a 14-point per contest 2023-24 campaign, and he's picking up right where he left off with Kika Thingans, who missed a lot of last season, being able to really elevate this year with 18.5 points per contest. Currently shooting 46.5% from 3. Whitney-Sydney, 13 points, 4 boards, a little bit more well-rounded. And for Lehigh, they do need to find a little bit down low. They lose Tom Pearland in the offseason, and as a result, right now Whitney-Sydney and its 4.2 rebounds per game, that's leading the way. So a Marist team that doesn't necessarily have a lot of rebounding. Jaden Collins Robinson, who he doesn't necessarily have a lot of size, he's right now your best rebounder in this game with about 5.5 boards per contest, and that should allow Jackson Price, who at 6'8", gives you about 12 points, 5 rebounds per game, to have a little bit of inroads down low, and he's got versatility to shoot about 35% from three-point range. But I do think the Marist, with their 37% three-point shooting, sees a little bit of regression here. Josh Passarelli has been really good to begin the season, but 54.5% three-point shooting is not sustainable. Last year he shot 38% from three-point range. I think that you're going to be looking a little bit more there. Marist has cleaned up their just overall backcourt as well, only turned the ball over about 11.5 times per contest. They're not generating as many turnovers as a season ago. They're still playing relatively slow and grimy, and this is a Lehigh team that they're looking to play very much up-tempo. This is a Lehigh unit that, against D1 competition, they have now given up at least 76 points in every one of their games as far as the season, so I do think that it's a situation of something's got to give. I did set my total 138.5. I do think that things are going to be dialed back a little bit more. I think that Marist experiences that regression with their three-point shooting, and that allows Lehigh to be able to find a way to be able to get the job done with their backcourt. So, want to lay up to a deuce with Lehigh, and I'm going to be in on the under 365.49, 365.50. This is another game that I wrote up for the article. Lipscomb is on the road against Alabama A&M. A&M is an 11 to 11.5 point underdog. Totals between 149 to 149.5. Wrote up the overs. I set my total at 156. Lipscomb has been playing a little bit more slowly this year, but right now they're shooting only about 29.5% from three-point range. Last year they were a top 15 team in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, and now they go up against an Alabama A&M team that's in the bottom 20 nationally with regards to their three-point shooting defense. Do think that Lipscomb sees a nice rise up with their three-point shooting, and I think that Jacob Onyesovic is going to be able to take it to Alabama A&M. He was the top scorer from 2 seasons ago for this team. Missed all of last year, has come back, giving the team 19 points, 8 boards per contest. With that said, though, I'm going to be willing to take the points with A&M. I set them as an 8-point underdog. This Alabama A&M team fouling a whole bunch, but they've done a nice job of being able to turn defense into offense. They're generating about 9 steals per game, shooting in the mid-30s from three-point range. They've been able to rise up with that regard. They've got A.C. Bryant along with London Riley in the backcourt, who have been able to combine for about 23.5 points per contest between the two of them. They're shooting north of 40% from three-point range. Darius Ford has been able to come in after he began his career at TCU, just could never really get out there on the floor, and he's been able to give out about 5 assists per game, so he's been able to give this team an element in the backcourt that they haven't had in quite some time. And then you've been able to get those 5 boards, about 14 points per game out of Ted Moody. They're not necessarily a dominant team down low, but this Lipscomb team doesn't have a lot of size either. Outside of Onyesovic, you don't necessarily have a ton there. You've got Will Pruitt, who does give you about 4.5 rebounds per game at 6'3". He last year was a north of 38% three-point shooter. That's down to about 20% this season. Again, think that should rebound. If you've got a Lipscomb team that's taking some relatively good care of the ball, they're only turning the ball over about 10.5 times per contest with Joe Anderson, who comes on over from Furman, giving you about 8 points per contest again. Shot 40% from 3 last year, 34.5% this season. Do you think that you get an up and down game with a lot of scoring? Alabama A&M has been a top 75 team in terms of total possessions per game, so semi-total 156. I wrote that up, and with this side, I said Lipscomb as an 8-point favorite, so we'll take the double figures here with Alabama A&M and wrap things up with 306-551, 306-552. Sacramento State is going to be playing us some Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst, a 9 to 9.5 point underdog, 129.5 to 130 is your total, and with Sacramento State, made them a 7.5 point favorite. I'm going to be able to take the points with Mercyhurst. For Mercyhurst, it's been an up and down season for them, to say the least. They lose that game to Air Force by about 500,000 points, but I do think that they're going to hang with a Sacramento State team that has been one of the worst teams in terms of points scored on a per possession basis in all of college basketball, and these are a pair of teams that are looking to play relatively slowly, but you've got a pair of versatile guys on both sides. Jeff Lynudis for Mercyhurst, 13.5 points at 6'6". He's been able to shoot it at about 36% clip from 3-point range. And then Jacob Holt, he does a bit of everything for the Sacramento State team. 6 boards, 14.5 points, shooting 43.5% from 3-point range. Both of these teams have had a few issues in being able to guard the 3-point line for Mercyhurst. You don't necessarily have a ton of size, so been able to get about 5 boards out of the freshman and Mykolas Ivanauskis, who's been able to give you 7.5 points per game for Mercyhurst. They do a nice job as well of taking care of the ball. So even though they play slowly, they're not giving away possessions. They shoot 76% at the free throw line, only about 29% from 3-point range, and they need to get Shamir Rathan-Mays going. He was playing for the beginning part of his career over at Youngstown State. He's been able to give the team right around about 3 assists per contest. Has dealt with an injury, missed a game or two early on during the season, but should be full go in this one. And then for Sacramento State, you've been able to have E.J. Neal be able to chip in there about 10.5 points per contest, and Julian Vaughns has been a really nice find coming up from the non-D1 ranks, being able to supply the team with 13 points per contest. It's a Sacramento State team that has been able to shoot overall 36.5% from the outside. Vaughns is shooting 35.5% from 3. Neal shooting darn near 40% from 3. It's a little bit of a top-heavy Sacramento State team that has a lot of guys that they give you like 4 to 5 rebounds per game, so they rebound by committee. But I do think that in the end, Mercyhurst is going to be able to hold in there because Sacramento State doesn't necessarily have, shall we say, intimidating size. And I do think that both of these teams take enough threes to be able to get the over. So I do like the over, so I total 131.5. I want to take the points with Mercyhurst, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. One guest free today, so if you do like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever your podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at GDN_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM, they mean does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast, find that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day on this podcast throughout the college basketball season, so I'm back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.
If you work in quality control at a candy factory, you know strict safety regulations come with the job. It's why you partner with Grainger. Grainger helps you find the high quality and compliant products your business needs to inspect, detect, and help correct issues. And the sweetest part is, everyone gets a product that's as safe to eat as it is delicious. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.